Hello again, my friends. Can you believe that in all of my years being one of YouTube's biggest resident Tumblrinas, I have never made a video about DashCon? I think for a long time it kind of felt pointless to me, like, everyone knows about DashCon, people have made videos about DashCon, what could I possibly have to say about it, kind of thing. But I did finally decide to revisit it for the 10-year anniversary. And I will be transparent, I think that decision was influenced by finding out that the very, very popular internet historian video about DashCon was perhaps not the most accurate. So I decided to revisit it. And, what happens next will shock you. This did not turn out how I expected it to. DashCon is an internet legend. Like, this picture alone gets such a visceral reaction out of people. And I really do think the word legend is an accurate way to describe what DashCon is, because not only is it very famous, but a lot of the facts about it are kind of nebulous origin. Like, it doesn't really matter who said what or what actually happened or what the source of this information is, just that it's a story that people love to tell. DashCon is like a spooky story that con-goers tell each other so that they can all have a laugh and cringe together. But my question going into this was, what actually happened at DashCon? Is it fair that DashCon is remembered as the most infamous scam and failed convention in like all of fandom history? And if not, what should DashCon's legacy be? I'm going to answer those questions, and many more questions about DashCon you never even dreamed of having, in the most long-winded way possible. But first, a word from this video's sponsor. Do you ever get emails? Weird emails? Hello, dear sir. Can I interest you in collaborate on exciting business opportunity for you? Ma'am, your Facebook has been hacked! Click here! This kind of spam is the result of data brokers selling your information to scammers and other unsavory types. Recently, Ticketmaster was hacked, and the data of 560 million users, that's a large number, was put up for sale on the dark web.
Includes me, by the way.
Oh my god! That includes you? Are you serious?
Yeah.
The data stolen includes full names, phone numbers, email addresses, home addresses, credit card information, which is why this video's sponsor, Aura, is an essential online safety tool. Aura alerts me when my data has been part of a data breach or leaked on the dark web. It gives me fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to access my credit card or bank account, and it removes my information from data broker websites so I get less weird spam. I also get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, identity theft insurance, and using Aura is so much easier and more affordable than downloading all of these different apps for all of these different purposes. It covers all of your online security bases in one convenient place. I don't want to be vulnerable to data breaches, and something tells me you don't either. So you can go check out Aura, aura.com/strangeeons. That link will be in the description down below for your clicking. You can try it for free for your first 2 weeks. And now I return you to your regularly scheduled DashCon. The question: what happened at DashCon? Well, lucky for us, it's not like DashCon happened hundreds of years ago and everyone who was there is dead. Most people who went to DashCon are like 28, and we can just ask them. So I did. I asked the actual people who were at DashCon what happened. I guess I should start off by kind of explaining to you like what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is, I guess, construct like an oral history of DashCon. Like, I've interviewed over 50 attendees.
Holy shit!
Yeah, so mainly over like email, so it's been like text-based interviews, but I've spoken to over 50 people who were there, like attendees, security staff, volunteers, like art vendors, like everyone. So I'm trying to construct pretty much like as accurate an account of DashCon as I can 10 years on when people's memories are a little bit blurry. Your story is like a really important part of that, obviously, because I think you were closer to a lot of the administrative nightmares than most people. Like, most people can only kind of speculate on that. Let's try and start from the beginning. Like, you have said that you are the person who like came up with the idea for DashCon, like the originator of it. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about?
Then I saw a Tumblr post that was like, hey, what if there was a Tumblr convention? And like, we had all the fandoms come and there were booths for all the fandoms. I thought that, hey, I can make that happen. I'm 15. I started telling people like, hey, I'm going to make a Tumblr con happen. Want to be on the staff? If so, send me a message and I'll make you an admin of the blog. A real great vetting process.
So it was kind of just open to anyone who wanted to participate in the start. The teenagers who Lachlan recruited named the convention TumbleCon USA, and they invented this system based around fandom committees who would raise money from their fandoms through fan art and fanfic auctions and commissions, as well as plan convention programming for their fandoms. You had the Star Trek committee, Hunger Games committee, Tolkien, Harry Potter, Supernatural, Teen Wolf, all kinds of popular and moderately popular fandoms on Tumblr at the time. One person who was part of the Avatar: The Last Airbender committee told me, "Let me be clear, during this point where we were in charge of planning panels, we had zero idea of what a convention panel was. We had never been to a convention. We were trying to put on a whole stage play of The Boy in the Iceberg, including filling in the blanks where the show cut away. No scripts were written, no costumes made or people cast. We had no planning experience and undiagnosed ADHD, and were given zero support or even deadlines from the con staff. It just sort of faded out of existence at one point. A lot of things sort of faded out of existence at this phase of planning TumbleCon, because nobody really had the means or experience to execute these ideas. There was high member turnover and a lot of disorganization among the committees, so it's unsurprising that Tumblr didn't really want their name associated with this. The convention ended up having to change their name to something other than TumbleCon, and they settled on DashCon, and then something very interesting happened, which is that more experienced adults began taking interest in this little project, and one of the loudest voices among them from the very beginning was Meg. Once I was brought in, we began asking that the committees proved their use via a few fairly simple tasks, and those that didn't were cut. In the very beginning, as best I know, since it was before I was involved, it was really just a large group of people sort of think-tanking about things they thought would be cool. There were fandom committees whose job was still unclear. There was a fundraising effort there, but I do know it went fairly poorly. A lot of them ended up dropping out or being weeded out as planning continued because, to be quite honest, despite their best intentions and hard work, most of them had no idea how to go from concept to reality. So the committee structure and the frivolous fandom teens were to be weeded out over the course of DashCon's first few months of existence.
When I moved to Denver, I was offline for a couple of weeks because I didn't have Wi-Fi, and this was before I had a smartphone. So when I got back online, I was like, who are you people? And why are you in my house?
Yeah.
And they were like grown-ups. There was Roxanne, Meg. I was like, who are you people? And they're like, who are you? And I was like, this is my blog. This is my blog.
Yeah.
Who are you people? And I think they did try to push me out, and I just lacked the social awareness to go anywhere because I was like, well, welcome back to my house.
The admins that I generally tend to hear about a lot are Roxanne, Meg, and Kane. Those are the three figures that I tend to hear about the most in terms of, the mythological DashCon admins. Can you tell me a little bit about, who those people were?
So Roxanne was a college student. She was majoring in hospitality. She was young, 19. I think at the actual con, she was 20. Or no, she had just turned 21. Meg was in her early 30s, so she was, I think, 33 at the time of the con. She was a self-proclaimed professional author and a businesswoman of 20 plus years, which is, she wrote my college letter of recommendation, and I'll have to show it to you because going back on it now, it's a little bizarre. When she said she was a professional author, she self-published one gay smut novel on the internet.
Nice.
I recently have a newfound empathy for Kane because some information came to light that I'm not going to share in this video.
Okay.
But Kane, now to my knowledge, was going through a lot of emotional, mental turmoil. He also was a dick to me. He was really mean to me. He made me cry several times. He just popped up one day. I don't know how he knew Meg. I do know that he was a cosplayer. I do know that he had the most convention experience out of all of us. No matter what he was going through, he was an asshole.
Got it.
And faking being British, and I will share that. He was faking being British.
We know definitively now he was faking being British. I knew that it was speculated that he was faking being British, but it's good to know that that is now confirmed. Under the direction of this absolute dream team, DashCon hit its fundraising goals and secured an impressive lineup of Tumblr famous guests. Welcome to Night Vale Steam Power Giraffe, Time Crash, the Baker Street Babes, Andy Stevenson, and other popular artists. Attendance in the thousands was projected. PowerPoint slides on how to convince your parents to let you go to DashCon circulated. Endless streams of GIFs of people screaming, late nights spent hot gluing cosplays, and finally, the attendees prepared to leave for the con. Yes, the rumors are true. I went to DashCon. When my sister graduated high school, she chose a summer trip to Europe for vacation. When I graduated high school, I chose a trip to DashCon. When DashCon was announced, I was really excited by the idea. There'd always been this sort of community idea of what if we had a convention for Tumblr, because it felt like a really big, active community at the time. I made a ton of friends there, and the idea of getting to see them IRL and geek out was really exciting. Plus, I cannot overstate how obsessed I was with Welcome to Night Vale at the time, and Steam-Powered Giraffe too, actually. DashCon was immediately appealing to me because I was very into Night Vale, and still am for the record. I think the Night Vale live performance was a draw for a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't have attended. I was a big fan back then, and it was so hard to get live show tickets. To make things worse, my crush lived across the country, typical fandom lesbians, and I wanted to get us tickets to see a show together, but it just wasn't tenable. Shows always sold out before we could confirm availability. Then this little local con right by me announced they'd have a Welcome to Night Vale show, and this was my chance. The weekend pass plus Night Vale tickets was something like $75 if I remember right, which was a pretty good deal for 3 days of con plus a show. I was about a 4.5-hour drive from the convention center and was otherwise not doing much, so I borrowed a car and decided to go. I live in the Chicago suburbs, so it was really local for me. I remember reading about the ball pit and picturing a whole moon-bounce ball pit situation, reading about the Super Hulock scavenger hunt, the cosplay contest, the Pacific Rim screening. I knew several of the artists I followed were going to be there, and they were going to have a prom, which meant I could do formal cosplay. I asked for the DashCon tickets for my birthday. It was for me and my best friend, who attended and even cosplayed Homestuck with me despite not knowing anything about it, and my mom, who was mostly excited about staying in the nice hotel and swimming in the pool. I was so hyped for this. I decided to go because I saw the what if there was a Tumblr convention hype post, and then someone had reblogged that with info about DashCon. I got so excited and emailed my mom about going, and told her how important it would be for me to go for my first convention. I was only a teenager then, and pretty oblivious, but I was very excited about the whole idea of TumblrCon. It made me feel seen and listened to in a way that wasn't getting fulfilled in my real life. It was a place I knew I would be accepted, even as a queer teen who lived in the Midwest. I was deep in the trenches of Tumblr fandom at the time. Doctor Who and Sherlock were the main two. I grew up extremely sheltered, and had literally googled Super Hulock events, and it popped up. I went to DashCon because a mutual lived in the area and we both thought it would be cool to meet in person. I think I found out about the con through a Tumblr post. I was freshly 18 and had decided Super Hulock was no longer cool or fun. But I was a big fan of Welcome to Night Vale, so I bought my ticket on January 5th, 2014. I also had 2 friends who lived close to Schaumburg. They were working for a website called The Geeky Area at the time, so they got press passes and came with me to film the Welcome to Night Vale show. My twin and I were pretty inseparable at this point. We live in Iowa, and in the early 2010s we had rocketed into fandom, and Tumblr quickly became our whole life and personality. I had no idea how to find other fans, or where to look for conventions. DashCon was the first convention that I knew would be in my area, and I was one of the earliest people to sign up. I was excited for it. We had went to Anime Iowa, and this one was going to be in Chicago, so I thought it would be a nice family weekend out. I was in high school and a friend invited me to go with them, because she was really excited to see the Welcome to Night Vale voice actors in person. I was on Tumblr, so I'd heard of the con and thought it seemed like a really interesting and good excuse to try cosplay for the first time. The DashCon organizers set up a way for people to put out calls for roommates or rides, and I was able to find 3 people from Kentucky as my hotel roommates. Since I was a broke 24-year-old fresh out of college with a crappy part-time customer service job and it was 2014, I scraped together the money to get a megabus to Chicago, as well as my share of the hotel rooms. My brother Ray got into Homestuck and into Tumblr a few years after I did. He was a couple years younger than me, and when he liked something, he loved it. I started cosplaying casually and then at local anime conventions in early 2013. By the start of 2014, we were working together on coordinated cosplays. I badly styled a wig for him, he thrifted a costume piece for me, all while Supernatural and Doctor Who played in the background. Our parents had gotten divorced recently, so it was a fun way to stay connected even though we spent most of our time in separate houses from each other. When we found out that DashCon was within easy traveling distance, my brother started applying for cosplay Q&A panels right away. I signed up after submitting a panelist application. I had to have a half-hour Skype interview with Meg and Roxanne, the admins, in order to even be considered. Once they knew that I was well experienced at running panels and had been a moderator, we discussed about 4 to 5 panels that they wanted me on. I had to jump through a lot of hoops to do an interview to have a panel. I had to submit a slide deck and answer a variety of questions. Once my panel topic was accepted, I was given 2 co-panelists. We talked a number of times over the months leading up to DashCon and spent hours working on our presentation. The DashCon anniversary was this past weekend. And the schedule was going around again and everyone was looking at all of these panel names and having a good laugh. Like, they're all so British men with cheekbones and stuff like that. Like,
those were submitted by the people.
Mm-hmm.
That was the people of Tumblr. That was not, I would love to take credit for British men with cheekbones. I would love to pass that off onto Meg. Unfortunately, that was just the people.
Oh, I fully believe that was the people of Tumblr. That was the climate of Tumblr at the time. How was like the DashCon lineup of programming curated? Like, DashCon seems to have like really catered towards like Tumblr interests. Like, to this day, I don't know if Night Vale was even popular off of Tumblr, but yes, tell me about that.
To this day is the weirdest kind of panel curation submission thing that I have ever experienced in my life. For DashCon, you could not submit your own panels. You could submit panel ideas. And then and this was not I just want to clarify, this was not my idea. I thought this was bizarre. I was just going to roll with it. But so then we, as the DashCon admins, could pick out the paneling we thought would be like good and that the demographic would like, which is why British men with cheekbones was a thing. I'm going to be so real with you. I did not like Super Wholock, any of it. Not Supernatural, not Doctor Who, nor Sherlock. I faked the whole thing. I had no interest in any of that.
So real for this.
I was purely there for the Homestuck and My Little Pony. Okay, yeah. So then, right, when we picked the panels, then we posted a list of the panels, and people could apply to run them and be on the panels. And then we did panelist interviews. So, like, if you submitted a panel, there was no guarantee you were going to get to run the panel. If you failed your audition, me, Roxanne, and Meg would have meetings afterward, and like freaking American Idol these people.
I wasn't sold on the idea of a Tumblr convention. My best friend suddenly announced to us in the college cafeteria that she had bought tickets for all of us to go to DashCon together. So the decision was made for me. I was 18, 19 years old. There was 5 of us who went together. We lived in Omaha, Nebraska, which is about an 8-hour drive to Chicago. We also picked up a friend who lived in Bumfuck, Iowa along the way, so a bit longer. I got to meet up with one of my best friends I had made on Tumblr, and we had the cutest emotional airport meeting hug. We took a 9-hour megabus ride to Chicago, arrived at the hotel in the evening on Thursday, July 10th. It was the furthest I'd ever been from home without my dad. I didn't think it was important to tell my parents that it was a Tumblr convention, so they didn't know until we got there, and they were a little bit upset about it. Shortly before the convention, we learned that Steam-Powered Giraffe had pulled out of the convention, but the convention failed to notify any of us who had paid extra to see the band. So leading up to the convention, my opinion of the organizers was already pretty low. I was lucky enough to stay in the hotel with my mom and some friends, because attending the con was a birthday present. That hotel was the fanciest hotel I had been to before, and I was absolutely enamored for months afterwards. One of my favorite moments was discovering that the bathroom mirrors in our hotel had a TV embedded inside, so you could watch TV and do your business at the same time, I guess. The Renaissance was not a hotel used to hosting fan conventions. The Renaissance did business conventions and weddings. When the organizers asked the hotel if they'd ever hosted a con like this, the manager said, "We've had train enthusiast conventions," and someone suggested that we tag stuff about the weekend with that as an inside joke.
My wife and I were on the security team. I had been on Tumblr for maybe about a year. I knew what Tumblr was. I knew what we were kind of getting into.
So you weren't like a resident Tumblr kid, like your background was in doing convention security, and that's how you ended up at DashCon.
Yes, I had been working convention security for about 5 years at the time. The group that we had assembled, we worked at Anime Central. Pretty much everyone I had on staff, at least had 1 or 2 conventions under their belt. Our job was pretty much to, make sure everyone's following convention rules. So that could be, for any convention, that'd be, prop rules, making sure, people aren't walking around with live steel, so real swords and stuff like that.
I've learned so much in doing this just about, like, the convention scene in general.
Yes, it is a beast. It is a whole beast itself. And unfortunately, it is full of young people with power issues where they get a modicum of power and just go crazy.
Interesting.
Yes, and that's kind of leads into what happened. So we actually met Meg. This was months out from the convention, and we went to the Schaumburg Convention Center. I did not say it out loud because I didn't want to be rude, but the hotel was way too nice, especially for a first-year con. It was too nice and too big. One concern we as a security team had were Meg and Roxanne's inexperience. They had never staffed a con before. A lot of convention, people who run conventions, they started, working in the registration line, working, guest relations. We kind of saw, the inexperience, and we're like, well, it can't be that bad. They're listening to us a lot, they're kind of leaning on us a lot, just general questions, not even like security and safety questions, just general convention questions. I want to say we weren't I don't want to say guilt tripped or gaslit into staying, but we were kind of felt bad. If I could go back in time and try to do anything, it would have been to change venues.
Yeah, they chose it strategically because it was a location that held a lot of or like this, not the hotel itself, but the city was like the hub of a lot of conventions. That's why they chose it, I think.
Yeah, like Chicago has, C2E2, Wizard World, Anime Central, so some of the biggest cons in the U.S. are hosted here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so no, I get it, but you could have done it somewhere. You could have done it at a little Holiday Inn.
A sentiment that a few people have expressed to me is like, it's not necessarily bad that they were young and inexperienced and had never run a con before. In a lot of ways, DashCon was kind of interesting and innovative and worth doing, and it's not bad that they were inexperienced. They should have not been so ambitious, I think, is what a lot of people tell me. Is like, if they had booked a small venue and like realistically estimated how many people would have showed up, like the disasters would not have happened.
I'll tell you something. I don't want to say hundreds, but tons of conventions don't make it past their first year. Tons of conventions get shut down one day into their stuff, but you don't hear about it. You only heard about DashCon because of Tumblr, because of what the convention was and is.
So we are ready, dressed, and we're about to go look around the hotel, see what's there, because it's huge. It's a huge hotel. We're gonna go do our registration for DashCon. These are the elevators. Elevators. Outside. Hallways. What's out there?
We've already found some people that look like they're coming to the con.
Yes. You can definitely tell the people that are coming here for DashCon and the people that are here for like business or whatever.
Oh, here are some of the places where some of the panels are. We need to figure out what panels we're going to go to and where the dealer's room is and stuff.
Yeah, we need to look at the schedule.
Yeah, and we need to figure out
Yeah,
what day
the
we're
ballroom, isn't that where it's supposed to be?
I think so.
How many people would you say were there?
Oh, God.
Because I hear very conflicting numbers, generally between like 300 and 1,000, I feel like is the estimate.
They were expecting 3,000 to 5,000. Those were always the estimates that we were told.
I mean, I don't need the exact number for actual attendance, but what would your estimate be for actual attendance?
I'd say between 1,200 and 1,500.
Okay.
That is everyone who purchased a badge.
Okay.
They might not have stayed the whole weekend.
I get into the hotel and check into my table. I was told I could start setting up at 8 p.m. The Artist Alley hours kept changing though, and I literally got an envelope with the schedule written on the back in a Sharpie. Beyond that, the first thing I noticed when I got to the hotel was how excessively nice it was for a first-year con. There were chandeliers in the Artist Alley. Chandeliers! Initially, I was excited, thinking, oh, there must be a lot of people coming to this thing if they can afford such a nice convention center. I really should have been worried when I never received an email about where to pick up my badge as a media attendee, and ended up going back and forth across the hotel when I went to pick up. It wasn't super encouraging when there was no printed schedules or program books available for guests, and the QR code for the online schedule on the back of my roommate's badge wasn't scanning properly. We arrived the day before to pick up our passes in that concrete floored room with "Welcome Friends" written on tape on the floor. I picked up my badge in person on Thursday with the predictable tiny registration table dwarfed by an enormous concrete room. 0 line. They had the table set up all the way at the back, just so you could walk across this big empty hall towards one person sitting at the table. The badges had a spot to write your URL, and of course, the famed fluffy chicken on the front. On the website, when we checked it before we left for the convention, tickets were listed at $30 for a one-day pass. We were a bit surprised then, when we went to find the admissions table and found a single harrowed volunteer at a folding table asking for $40 a person, cash preferred. My grandmother walked us in, thankfully, so she could pay for the tickets and then leave quickly, but the change in price set her on edge immediately. She pulled up the website and pointed out the ticket price listed there, and the poor volunteer seemed to have been utterly unaware that the website had prices listed at all. We were charged $30 a person, and my brother and I entered the con.
We got our badges! Yay! Look! Oh, badges!
Yay! And I got a little tumbler thing. So cute. I just ran. I'm kind of a little bit out of breath. Is that sad? I'm gonna run again. 1, 2, 3. Run to the door! I gotta go! Bye!
I felt like the event really advertised itself to people as Comic-Con for people who couldn't afford to go to Comic-Con, and that's the kind of attendees it got. Median age was probably 20.
We say hi to Tumblr! Hi, Tumblr!
was hard not to feel old around all the kiddos. My friend and I even joked about being the grandmas of DashCon because, well, we are. There were a small number of people like us, well-educated 30-somethings with decades of fandom experience in our back pockets, but the vast majority of attendees were in their late teens, early 20s, partway through their college experience, and it showed. My wife was in the Megamind fandom, and they had all set up DashCon as the place to have a fandom meetup. I remember we had this little mini cookout thing with bratwursts the night we got in. I want to say like 16 of us made it, including one person all the way from Argentina. We rented 2 suites in the long-term stay hotel just over the bridge from the DashCon hotel that both had kitchens, so the crock-pot meals went really well. I made spaghetti with homemade sauce. I think it was actually a pot roast now that I think back on it. We've had a couple of fandom meetups since then.
They bought us tiaras. They, being Roxanne and Meg, bought us tiaras to signify that we were DashCon admins.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's a nice tiara. It looks good.
But you can see that I'm wearing it in the DashCon ball pit photo.
So you rolled up to the DashCon weekend, like, I guess optimistic, but like unprepared for what was about to happen.
It wasn't just the weekend. It was we were there for a week working in the hotels. We had a boardroom. I would help like print out badges and stuff. I was in con ops, so I had like an office. It was like the size of my bedroom. A couch, there was a desk, I had a bunch of goodie bags that I was giving to like press and people, and I was not allowed to leave that room.
Okay.
If I tried to like go to the bathroom or something, I had not eaten. I was so tired. I would help like arrange schedules. I would run around and do whatever Rox needed. We would go out and we would eat dinner, and it was great because I love dinner. And of course, you know, they would snip at each other, they being Rox and Meg and Kane. But I was just kind of in my own world, and I was just happy to be there. I was taking a whole lot of naps because I had undiagnosed narcolepsy and was not on any kind of medication. So I was really just out of it the whole time. I did education and stuff at state fairs, but I never had any like customer service-y jobs. It was really scary because a lot of people suddenly had concerns. And I was just like, nobody's told me anything. I'm just here. Never in my life. I'm used to holding a chicken.
How old were you at the time? I think you said before 17. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A question that like a lot of people have, like hearing about like teenagers involved in these kind of like weird scammy situations is like, where were your parents, I guess? Like, why were you allowed to do this? Like, why did you have all the freedom to like go run DashCon?
So my parents are insane.
Okay.
They are, my mother is actively dying, so she can no longer take care of me. She's not dead. She's still alive.
Okay.
And I went to go live with my dad. He would be out of town for like weeks at a time, leaving me alone in a high-rise apartment in downtown Denver. I would eat nothing but like Biscoff cookie butter for a week. I had no idea how to take care of myself. All I had was like Tumblr and DashCon, and I would tell my parents. I told my mom, and she was like, "Oh, that's so good. You're just a little business lady. Proud of you." And I would tell my dad, and he'd be like, "Great. Okay, goodbye."
Let me actually tell you a quick story on Thursday, because this kind of set everything into motion. So at the start of every convention, I'd like to do a tour with my department and say where things are going to be, things that we need to look out for, you know, blah, blah, blah. And when we're done with the tour, Roxanne comes up to me crying. She tells me that Megan Kane demoted her, that she is no longer the head. She essentially, they kind of took the con from her. I remember asking Roxanne, "Hey, you gave me the authority to pull badges," which is essentially removing someone from the convention. "Would you like me to remove their badges?" And that got her, you know, laughing and calmed down a bit. But the red flags were raising again, because this sounded also more like there was just interpersonal drama between the three of them.
They presented a document to Roxanne that basically said that Meg was the president of the company, Kane was the vice president of the company, and Roxanne was now the secretary of the company. And they were like, "You need to sign this." And she was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. What the heck is this?" She's like, "You're demoting me to secretary?" And Kane had only been there for like a couple, like not, maybe like 2 months. So very, very not long at all. Well, Roxanne had been there since the near beginning.
So there was definitely some kind of like an interpersonal drama that like you still don't know what it was between like her and Kane and Meg.
Best of my knowledge, I think it was just Meg deciding that she wanted to be the queen bee.
Friday morning, I'm up early, around 9-10 a.m. I went to the coffee shop and had a coffee and breakfast. I was by myself and overheard the organizers. There were 3 or 4 people having a meeting about the wedding scheduled and the locale, and it's not enough to bother me. It seemed like they were hashing out details of something, but there was a level of concern I was picking up from the organizers. It seemed like they weren't angry, but they definitely were trying to figure something out. Nobody was yelling. I didn't really focus on it at all. I just noted it and was like, I'm sure they'll figure it out. It was clear walking in on Friday morning that everything was disorganized. There was no signage for where I needed to go, no clear designation of the artist alley, and very few staff around to ask questions. There wasn't a lot of food around, just a small hotel Starbucks that sold out of food very quickly, candy in the dealer's room, and a fancy restaurant. We spent a lot of time on Friday wandering around hungry. The overall vibe was pretty tame and a little boring.
What the heck? There's no food? There's nothing out? Why? What kind of cookies are these? What kind of cookies are these? I don't know, I'm gonna eat one though.
Nobody would feed me. I was so hungry. Okay, I was promised, Nessie, Lachlan, we will get you food. Okay, we will get you food. I was alone, 17 years old, working in con ops. I was so hangry. I was crying. I was stuck in con ops and they wouldn't let me out. And the only kind of respite that I got was the bar would give out these free cheddar crisps, which I later found out were literally just shredded cheese that were melted on aluminum foil, but they would give them out for free. Oh, and I would run to the bar and hope that Kane wouldn't catch me and hope that I could use cheddar crisps, and I would put them in my purse and I would run back to con ops and be like a little mouse.
The worst part, though, was the so-called video game room. Having gone out to Anime Midwest last week, I expected a full room of Xbox, Wii, PS3, PS4 playing stations. In reality, there was one TV in the entire room, along with a bunch of tables. I had time to kill before a panel. So I stopped in the quiet room, where 2 people were carrying on a loud conversation. Then in the games room, a bunch of people were playing some Cards Against Humanity knockoff, so I joined a kid, I think they were 12, who was sitting alone at another table with their parent, and we played Uno for a while since it was the least complicated table game around. I hope that kid ended up having an okay time. After that, I went to Mark Ashiro's panel, where they were dramatically reading some extremely not safe for work Batman RoboCop fanfiction. Mark Does Stuff's panels were a big highlight. We hung out with a couple of Welcome to Night Vale fans we knew from Tumblr too, just did normal con things, watched the cosplayers go by. I remember somebody had a Mishapocalypse print dress on, it was glorious. The halls had big windows all along one wall, which let in a refreshing amount of natural light, but the interior corridors were a bit narrow, and the decor was minimal if present at all. There were fake trees and plastic pots at the end of each interior hallway, some couches and benches formed lounge areas in some of the corners, but there weren't many places to sit aside from that. Still, we found a group of other Homestuck cosplayers, met up with the other panelists, and ended up hanging out with a large group in one of the hallways with windows. Here's a group picture. I think I'm still Tumblr mutuals with at least 3 of these people. I cosplayed Dave Strider from Homestuck, god tier outfit, so I hung out with the other Homestuck fans for much of the day. It was still back in the heyday of Homestuck cosplay culture, which means that if you were into Homestuck and cosplay, that you could just integrate yourself into a group of strangers that were also into Homestuck cosplay. I was cosplaying Eridan Ampora. I don't quite remember how, but I acquired a plastic shark that I knew I would take to the Night Vale writers and cast to sign. And I did. And I still have it, but all the names except Cecil's have worn away with time. It was just people hanging out and being nerdy at each other. There were so many cosplayers from so many fandoms, higher density of cosplayers than I was used to from anime cons. Photo shoots for a bunch of different fandoms. DashCon was the most Tumblr-like experience I've had in real life. Lots of younger nerdy people hanging out, sharing memes, seeing and being seen. It felt a little weird in the crowd that I wasn't wearing either cosplay or some variety of fandom/nerd shirt. Everything was clearly very amateurish. It was put together by someone who had never been, but had seen clips of what happened at a convention and wanted to replicate that with the help of their high school theater department. We were given a schedule with different panels to attend, but the qualifications to host a panel did seem to be, is a Tumblr user. The vibe was very much more, your friends give you a PowerPoint presentation about the thing they like than anything else. It was still fun, and I had some good conversations with people seated around me at these events, but it really wasn't Comic-Con. We created flowcharts to explain the complicated dynamics of Omegaverse and researched the history of it so that we knew we had our facts right, and we both put a massive amount of thought into the aspects of Omegaverse that we wanted to highlight during the group discussion section. For me, it was about the ways people are using the 6 genders of Omegaverse as a metaphor for the broken way that we as a society treat gender, as well as the ingrained stereotypes, and how that metaphor can be used to subvert stereotypes and explore alternates to traditional gender roles. I will say the description I provided when I submitted that panel was not the description that the con organizers decided to use on their schedule. Can You Not? Exploring Omegaverse 18+, a growing subset within fandoms. Topics such as gender roles, gendered language, and the 6-gender system will be discussed among many other topics. Totally lame, right? We originally intended to attend multiple panels and attractions, but ended up only seeing a couple. The first was Doug Jones's panel. We actually bumped into him in the hallway and helped direct him to the room for his panel. He'd been wandering around the halls with someone appearing to be his agent or some sort of guard. He was extremely friendly and personal and let me get a picture with him, and to my eternal delight, patted my belly and called me a pup. Needless to say, this short-circuited all of my bisexual wiring. He's very tall. But I should note that the reason he was wandering around is because, at least from what I can tell, there was almost no staff for the convention. We decided in the Homes panel that if we were going to talk about a 130-year-old fandom with over 100 different adaptations and fit it into an hour, we should probably figure out what knowledge our audience was starting with. Were they a bunch of Sherlock fans who'd never heard the name William Gillette? Or were they like us, walking, talking Holmesian dictionaries? Or somewhere in the middle? We decided we'd start with a quick quiz. We asked for 5 volunteers, and we were going to ask 5 questions. So the questions went up in difficulty. I think I started with name 3 actors to play Sherlock Holmes who aren't the current 3, and the last question was supposed to be impossible. Holmes had been a special interest of mine for years, and I dredged the bottom of my memory and my annotated additions for this question. There was a beat after I asked it, and then he fucking got it. This kid had the look of someone who got bullied a lot. I suspect for the same reason he did so well on the quiz. And then the room went absolutely bug shit, cheering and clapping. He'd gotten a question I openly told him I didn't think anyone would be able to answer without looking it up. The look on his face when I said, "Come on up, I've got a prize for you," when for a few minutes he got to be a fucking rock star. That moment is my DashCon. Fuck everything else that happened. That kid standing there looking half afraid to even open his mouth and getting that movie moment, you don't see that very often. The atmosphere on the first day was so joyful and connected. Everyone was so stoked to be at the Tumblr convention. All of us were weirdos who liked the weirdo website enough to show up in person for all of our weirdo friends. We were all exchanging URLs and taking big group photos and going to grab lunch together. I even joined a few games of Cards Against Humanity in the hallways, as everyone was welcome to join. If I remember correctly, the Kyoshi Warrior won the cosplay contest. I got a bunch of random tchotchkes and I stuffed them into my pockets, and then I handed them out to random people. I think I proposed with plastic rings to a couple of people even. I still have some of the feathers that I had in my hair. The most drama-filled attendees were the guys roaming the halls taking video to make fun of everyone, the one everyone who does a review of DashCon uses.
Some fucking stupid idiot rented a bounce castle here at scenic DashCon, Illinois, because they know that what they're dealing with here is children. And what do children like? Ball pits and bounce castles. So, for people with the mentality of children, here, let's get in close here. Let's get in close and see this. For people with the mentality of 4-year-olds, you have a bunch of fucking idiots in a ball pit. A bunch of fucking invalids in a ball pit.
I think they were proven to be false, but we had actually found threads on 4chan of people planning and coming and, disrupting the convention.
There was one person who told me that there was a guy going around basically just filming attendees and kind of making fun of them and just being a dick. That footage is most of the footage that the Internet Historian DashCon video is based on. Yeah,
that's another problem.
Most of the DashCon footage in that video is the footage from this guy, unconfirmed whether he's a 4chan user, but this guy who showed up to make fun of the attendees. Lots of the cringe photos circulating from DashCon were happening simultaneously at every small to medium nerdy convention across the Midwest United States in that era, because nerds do goofy things when they hang out together. It was an extremely affirming environment. People were kind, treated each other with respect and joy, and there was some very serious and intense discussions of geekery, fandom, LGBTQIAP+ identities, and the way they all intersect. I felt safe and unafraid of someone violating my personal and physical boundaries, which I can't say about previous cons I've attended. In a lot of ways, we were less necessary than security at larger anime cons, with a lot of drinking and a more balanced ratio of dudes to dames. Fewer people found passed out drunk in bathrooms, a lot less sexual harassment, etc. Because the attendees respected the maxim that cosplay is not consent, they did not touch or take photos of cosplayers without their explicit permission. intermission, veteran cosplayers often noted with relief how unmolested they felt at DashCon compared to mixed-sex cons where they were often groped. Everyone I talked to at the con was so well-spoken and thoughtful, even the teens. The panelists were entertaining and well planned out. I was on a number of them. The vast majority of the con was just a regular con, very fandom-focused, which was honestly so fun. There was a lot of cosplay, many people cosplayed memes and fanfic tropes and stuff. It was a good representation of being among online fandom friends. I met many people I'd known online for years. I didn't talk to a lot of people outside of the Homestuck group, so I can't say for sure how friendly the event was as a whole, but our little gathering was, for a brief time, just some excited kids getting to talk to each other about a funny webcomic we all liked. The schedule was constantly changing, and not exactly what we, the attendees, were led to believe. Guests who were supposed to be making an appearance weren't there, room locations changed last minute, panel times changed last minute, and as previously mentioned, the blurbs describing the panels were not what the panelists submitted. I have confirmation from at least 3 other panelists that their blurbs were completely changed without any forewarning, and that new panelists were added to panels without much warning either. The lack of proper sound system was noticeable. There were small microphones in the bigger rooms, and Time Crash and the DJ for Dash Prom were properly amplified, but a lot of the other panels were not. Again, it was kind of expected for a first-year con, but for a con based so heavily in media, it was frustrating not to have proper sound. This was especially true for the karaoke that should have really been advertised as a fandom sing-along. The karaoke vendor pulled out, so some of the volunteers made us a projector screen and we just had to sing along to Tumblr's greatest memes.
We're at the Disney sing-along. We is at the Disney sing-along.
I do recall going to a Deadpool panel and finding out inside that it was supposed to be 18+, but they had no one checking ID for adult panels or anything, so I easily got in as a minor. I spent most of the time meeting and hanging around with people. I actually brought business cards I made with Vistaprint with my username on them. It's possible someone out there still has one with my old fandom name on it. My close friend and I from different states met there, and we did a few of the panels, Write Your Name in Gallifrey and the Dr. Horrible sing-along blog sing-along, with a way too small screen. They were all underplanned, but I wasn't too bothered. I have since been to several other conventions, and I can now say that it was actually pretty normal. There was a Language of Tumblr panel. Okay, why not? Linguistically, Tumblr is fascinating. You know what else there was? A Shakespeare panel, led by professors, that was like a way more fun version of my upper-level university literature class. A NaNoWriMo and original fiction panel where people were giving out tips and advice about writing. There was a panel about the power of transformative works in fandom, and at all of those panels, and the sillier ones, I was not once disappointed. We went to the Baker Street Babes live podcast panel, since I was on it, and I had a fantastic time. Lindsay and Liz of the Baker Street Babes were fun and nice to us, and it was a great time. Friday we had our panel and live podcast and everything went great. Our audiences were superb. I was also in the life stage where any mention of queerness even existing was a win, because it was so not spoken of where I lived. So seeing panels and fan art that centered around those things was really nice, though I felt like I had to look at it out of the corner of my eye because I was there with my mom and she didn't want me wandering off in any strange area, and I hadn't even tried to broach the subject to see if she was supportive of gay rights yet. The social issues panels were really well run. This ties back to the people attending the con being amazing. I went to a few panels that were related to various social issues such as dealing with anxiety, sexuality in genre TV, and gender in marketing. While some of the panelists on the more fandom-oriented panels might have seemed inexperienced, these panelists knew what they were doing and what they were talking about. One panel was getting dunked on online due to the name, homoerotic subtext or something to that nature, that turned out to be a really interesting deep dive into the difference between subtext, queerbaiting, and actual queer media, which had a whole section about how to support LGBT+ storytellers. And there was a mountain of wank heaped on the heads of the 3 queer people responsible for the homoerotic subtext panel. One early Tumblr post, reblogged over 67,000 times, characterized the con-goers as white kids in flower crowns rioting over the anti-sexualization of women in media, while holding panels about homoerotic subtext. Never mind the fact that people up in arms over it weren't actually in attendance, so didn't hear the pretty long lecture the panelists gave cis white women about fetishizing the gay community. If someone came to this panel expecting doe-eyed fanning over cis gay white ships, wow, did they come to the wrong place. What they got was 3 badass queer people speaking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of subtext, shipping, fanworks, bi-ace, pan-invisibility, the lack of trans characters, the green bean bullshit that is queerbaiting, the lack of people of color, the political responsibilities when straight white people write male-male, the pervasive sexism in fandom and media, the lack of femslash, the lack of good female characters to ship, and where to find actual representation. Because Tumblr hyper-magnified DashCon, people assumed that the panel would be about fetishizing gay ships. The next steps thousands of people took? They found out who was on the panel. Me. And instead of actually scrolling down 3 fucking posts to my selfie, they accused me of being a straight white man appropriating the gay. Then the death threats started to come in. And then I was pretty much done with Tumblr. I just happened to be a trans attendee, and I attended a panel the night before that was called LGBTQ Support, where everybody talked a bit about their own identity, and the only trans woman representative was a woman in her 70s, I think, who had transitioned in her 60s, I believe. While her own experience of her own life is obviously valid, and nothing I want to challenge, her terminology, her understanding of queerness and transness, and her explanations were archaic. At the end of the panel, Bisexual Books did a quick giveaway of her Night Vale tickets for the next day because she'd won priority seating in a raffle, and I won one. When I went up afterwards to collect, I made a comment to her and Mark Does Stuff about the trans rep not being great, and they invited me to be on the LGBTQ&A panel the next morning, since they didn't have a trans woman for that panel. Our trans panelist was not very up-to-date in proper terminology. Thankfully, we got Bryn Convenient to come to the second one. I've been doing Q&A panels on queerness or LGBTQA issues since I was 19. I have never experienced a crowd as respectful as the DashCon one. I'm so used to bracing myself for the inevitable wank that I was pleasantly surprised when it never happened. Even the one straight guy who asked something asked a great question.
So, I've been involved in like a gay straight alliance kind of thing, or queer straight alliance, I guess is the proper terminology now, down in Carbondale where I go to school. But I'm kind of curious, because it's brought up a lot in our meetings of how the use of the word queer specifically is like turning around now, but it's like, where?
So ready for this question.
My question is really like, where is it turning around? Like, because it seems to be like a regional thing in the States.
Yeah,
but,
it's very regional.
It's just, I don't want to, like, because I don't, like, I travel a lot, so I don't want to, like, be like, oh yeah.
Well, I would say short answer, it's however a person wants to be defined. Is really what it comes down to. What all of us are, I think all of us are talking about is that these things mean different things for certain people. So the importance is, don't call someone queer because money. Because for some people, even myself included, that word was a horrible slur. So I grew up in Southern California in the desert. And that word was said with that sneer.
The Artist Alley opens at 1 p.m. and everything seems to be going well. The staff is friendly, albeit overwhelmed. I sell pretty well for the first 2 hours, although not as well as other 5K cons I've sold at. Then everyone disappears. The panels opened at 3 p.m., so literally everyone at the con was in the Artist Alley for those 2 hours. My favorite moments were usually in the Artist Alley, which is still the case for the cons I go to today. Supporting fellow artists and getting unique things pertaining to my interests will always be fun for me. I wore a necklace I got there for years until it broke. I remember meeting new and friendly people and just feeling really comfortable in my own skin. For a depressed, insecure 15-year-old, that was huge. I was cosplaying as a horror anime character, Rena Ryugu from Higurashi. My giant bloody metal shovel couldn't find any proper-looking plastic ones at Goodwill. Got confiscated by security before I could go into the Artist Alley. I wasn't too mad about it though, and security was pretty nice about it, if a little tired. Also, I've now matured enough to know not to bring an actual weapon onto convention floor. Still embarrassed about that one. At least I remembered to let all the fake blood dry before getting to the hotel. I used to work the con circuit in Chicago doing Artist Alley, primarily my fan art prints and on-site sketch/ink commissions. I did this through my MA, both as a hobby and to make pocket money. I had multiple cons under my belt by DashCon and almost always made a profit or at least broke even. The table price cost more than it would normally for a baby con, even medium-sized con, which should have probably raised more red flags than it did. Every Artist Alley is a gamble. You spend money on table, transportation, prints, etc., not knowing if you'll make it back. But by then, it'd been a pretty consistently safe gamble for me for a couple of years and many cons, so I thought that, despite the somewhat steep table price, especially for a first-year con, I'd be making a solid investment. I sold mostly prints and buttons at that time. I remember forcing myself through doing a Sherlock print that didn't sell at all, LMAO. I sold your typical Artist Alley merch, posters, stickers, pins. I even had little Tumblr notification pins made specifically for DashCon. Flower crowns were starting to get popular on Tumblr about this time. So I started making huge head-eating flower crowns that were a bit more like festival wear, and I get a little creative with the materials too, like antlers, bones, fake coral pieces. They were so insanely popular at DashCon, I was unprepared. I came with about 24 because they weren't usually that popular, sold out of them within the first 3 hours. I had to hold down the table so they could run to find a Jones/Michaels and buy more flowers several times over the weekend. So I would make them at the table and sell them almost immediately, never before had that kind of success, never would sell at that rate ever again. I had zero frame of reference for what cons are like, so I was perfectly happy to hang out in the artist alley and talk with people who like to draw my favorite anime characters for fun. Also, I met 2 people who cosplayed the Glow Cloud, a giant glowing cloud that rains dead animals from Welcome to Night Vale, which was a pretty cool feat of textile engineering, so I mostly saw it as a more sociable craft fair with a dress-up portion. Something about my Glow Cloud. Because it was constructed by my literally tying clear upholstery thread around bunches of polyfill and then stitching them down, it was very prone to shedding both small particles and entire poofs. One of my favorite things about the con at the end of Sunday was how people would find them on the floor and wait until I walked by so they could give them back to me. Felt very neighborly. I met some artists I admired. Geo the Bio, Enerjax, and D. Stevenson were there in the artist alley, and they were so wonderful. With Enerjax specifically, I crocheted her a little Sherlock plushie and gave it to her. When I went up to greet N.D. Stevenson at his table and buy one of his prints, it was very clear from the moment I saw him that he was also deeply frustrated, but he was also clearly doing his best to be friendly to the attendees, so that was a really good impression of him as a person. There was originally plans to have a dealer's hall and a separate artist alley. By the time we were given a map of our tables, it had shrunken down to a single ballroom, including artist alley, vendors, and guest tables. We had been informed of our table number/location, but we definitely ran into people who had not, and there seemed to be some confusion about how the whole dealer's room was running and who was in charge. I was on a wall with a table who did Lolita accessories, and we both had a good few empty tables to our other sides. The people I came with were on the whole other side with the same situation. It was the first time I was able to get homework for my MA done while working at con. It was so dead. We were trying to figure out how we were going to file our taxes. At the time, I was so used to cons giving you the paperwork, and they had nothing for us. I thought it was strange that the vendor hall was half of a huge ballroom that was also booked for a wedding. I think they had to pack up in the evening. I felt bad for them for paying a table fee equivalent to a bigger con. I was at the Welcome to Night Vale meet and greet Friday, which was essentially anyone who had either paid or won a raffle lined up to say hi to some of the Welcome to Night Vale cast. I got them to sign a poster I made, but I was so nervous I kind of rushed past. I had the first merch shirt, which was a cute Cecilos drawing, and I had it signed with the trifecta of signatures. I also got to go to the Welcome to Night Vale meet and greet because my name was drawn in their lotto, which my twin is still sore about. This was Friday night when the cast already knew some stuff was screwy, but most of us attendees didn't yet. When I ran into them later after a show in 2015, I told them, this is actually the second time I met you. The first time was DashCon. I almost feel like I have to apologize for that. They all did that thing where they suck in their teeth at the reminder of the event, but they also said it wasn't my fault that the whole event was an organizational shit show. I think if I remember, they all gave me their condolences for attending it as well. There was also a wedding that was going on that weekend, which I discovered after walking through the reception in full Kevin from Desert Bluffs cosplay, covered head to toe in blood. It's just sort of hilarious to me that this normal bride and groom were at DashCon, and likely none the wiser as they were trying to take nice photos, while a bunch of costumed weirdos were milling about. The security crew who worked Dash, and had worked Anime Central for several years at that point, had a tradition of a midnight toast. One 15-minute period where they took a quick break for 3 traditional toasts and maybe a bite to eat. And Friday night of Dash, when we did toasts, someone brought out a cake they'd gotten for Van because it was their first con as department head. They'd gotten it from a grocery store, and it was one of those cakes that has Happy Birthday written across it with room for a kid's name. So the cake read, "Happy birthday, don't fuck up." And then, well, all of DashCon happened. Where were you when you found out the money was owed?
At the Ask a Troll panel, dressed up as Vriska Circuit, completely painted gray.
Cool. And Kane was Gamzee on that panel, right?
Who was Gamzee?
I was set to be playing Gamzee Makara in the Let Me Tell You About Homestuck panel. You know, gray paint takes a long time to do by yourself. The Homestuck panel was from 8 to 9 p.m. The panel got raucous. The guy playing Gamzee had the Octopimp style voice down to a science, and the Q&A was pretty fun. My brother spent the whole night rehearsing the Fan and Nepeta impression so that he could say anything he needed when the open Q&A started. I was mostly there for moral support and to do his makeup, because body paint is way harder to get right if you're trying to manage all of that plus wardrobe and wig styling by yourself. Pretty early on, my brother put his flower crown on the Equius cosplayer and he wore it the whole time. He was having a lot of fun. I was glad to finally be at the panel, and it looked like it was going to be a fun end to the night before our grandmother came to pick us up around 9:30. And then Gamzee got a phone call. The phone call was from the convention organizers, putting out the word that the convention center was going to shut down the whole con unless the attendees pitched in $17,000. The hotel, quote-unquote, did not like our attendees, so basically redacted their oral agreement they'd established with our former business partner, and were fixing to kick us out unless we were able to come up with the rest of the money. The first thing people were in upheaval about was the fact that the person, who had been doing an impression of a high clown with an American accent, suddenly started speaking seriously in a British accent. It took him 3 tries at least to deliver this information, because everyone was fucking flabbergasted that his real actual voice was the crispest British accent you could possibly imagine after 55 minutes of hearing him not break character on the 2014 Fan and Gamzee impression.
He didn't come back, but Roxanne poked her head through the door and was like, "Hey, Lachlan, come here. Vriska, come here." And I did. And then she told me, and she was like, hey, the hotel needs money now. We need to have like $17,000 now. And we've already like maxed out our credit cards. So the $17,000 includes the money that like Roxanne and I think maybe Meg, but like the security and stuff are maxing out their cards too.
I made my way back to the staff office, only to then be told that staff members were being kicked out of their rooms. Quickly, I made my way upstairs. I jumped in the shower to remove what paint I could, and changed into proper attire.
The convention was paying for the guest rooms, and they were paying for my room. So any hotel room that was a part of that room block was locked out. So I think that my room and Roxanne's room, because like my blanket and my stuffed rhino were in there, and I'm autistic, and I was like, oh my god, my stuff. And it was also scary because as I was being locked out of my hotel room, I was like checking on my phone, and I could see emails coming into my personal email telling me like to hang myself. I could see messages coming into my personal Tumblr telling me to like kill myself, drown myself, like all these horrible, horrible things. And people like saying that they were going to come kill me. And I became paranoid. I was like, oh my god, is that the people down there? Are the people down there saying that to me?
My staff wasn't able to sleep in their rooms for hours. I was actually taking a nap at the time when hotel security knocked on my door and kicked me out of the room. My wife had medicine in our hotel room that they would not let her go up and get. She needed to be escorted by hotel security to go get her meds. So that's when we kind of made a little war room to try to figure out what we're going to do, come up with money. And I think that's when we made one of our first big mistakes, is that we actually reached out to Night Vale for help. And they saw the writing on the wall. And that's, I think, what influenced everything that happened on Saturday.
I then proposed to Meg that we gather everyone in the ballroom to inform our attendees of the situation. I felt as though they had a right to know, and if anyone was going to help us out of this crisis, it would be the people who cared and supported us all along. She gave me the green light, and I went about gathering volunteers to go and clear out the panel rooms and direct everyone into the ballroom for an emergency announcement. I have a vivid memory of them coming to collect us from the pool for the big extortion/fundraiser meeting. We were attending an 18+ dramatic bad fanfiction reading panel when someone burst into the room announcing that everyone needed to go to one of the large rooms for something important happening. I was coming back from getting food when I learned there was an important announcement in one of the ballrooms. I was in the fandoms panel, which started at 9 p.m, and we hadn't even gotten 10 minutes in when we were told by a staff member to meet down in Schaumburg West because the hotel was threatening to shut the con down. Everyone was interrupted at whatever panel they were at and told to come to the ballroom because the con was being shut down. At the time, many people thought this was a lie to get everyone into the ballroom for the actual scheduled event, Tumblr Prom. We agreed to volunteer on the first day of the con, which got us a discount and some swag. Since we were over 21, we were tasked with guarding one of the 18+ panels. I believe it was called Whose Line Is It Tumblr? A comedy improv show with Tumblr-themed prompts. The DashCon staff posted that they needed a lot of money on Tumblr, and of course, someone who was scrolling Tumblr noticed and called it out to the panelists. They thought it couldn't possibly be real, and got through most of a skit about Nigerian princes at a gullible convention before we were pulled out by staff. The panel was only about half over when I saw a big crowd of people heading in the same direction, and then the doors opened behind me and everyone in the panel was leaving. This was when everyone was being called into one of the main rooms so they could break the news that they were short on funds and needed donations. Our first thought when they started herding us into the ballroom was that there was an active shooter, because the whole thing felt like active shooter drills that we have in America. The only thing we were told was to get downstairs by one of the con staff, and we were standing in a windowless room with a crowd of people who had no idea what was going on. This was when I met up with my artist friends again, and they said they were locked out of the artist alley, aka away from their products/source of income. That was very concerning, but I was fairly sure the hotel would not take their personal items permanently. I remember not caring much about it at all. I knew things would work out, and if not, I would help my friends gather their things, and we'd all go to our homes. Most of my group, there were 8 people in my hotel room, which is dangerous and inadvisable, and anyone you know who's done conventions for long enough will have at least one story about doing this, went up to the hotel room to chill. I'd hit it off with someone, I think it was my co-panelist from Sherlock Holmes, so we went to the hotel bar to keep talking and have a drink. And there we were sitting, vaguely discussing the idea of going down to check out Tumblr Prom, when we heard someone say, "They're kicking us out?" We thought maybe someone was too drunk and needed help back to their room or something, so we went to ask. And this is how we found out what was going on downstairs. Or rather, we heard a grapevine version of it. Everyone was being kicked to the curb. Not just the convention, the people. We would not be permitted to stay at the hotel in the rooms that we'd paid for. A lot of these kids thought they'd be sleeping on the street in cosplay. Of course, we went downstairs to get more information, which supposedly Roxanne had. And every time I see the gif of the dude with the pizzas, I know exactly how that dude feels, because that was me walking into the DashCon ballroom. My brother and I decided to just go ahead with our original plan to meet our grandmother out in the parking lot. We watched the gathering crowd in the lobby on our way out, and decided to go out a side door and walk outside where our grandmother's car was waiting. However, we had made friends that day, and those friends were live blogging the whole thing. The whole way back to our grandmother's house, we were scrolling through update after update. Tumblr prom was supposed to occur in like an hour. A lot of people were already dressed up. The doors were closed, and the attendees were told that the convention was in danger of being kicked out by the hotel. The hotel apparently didn't know what they were getting into when they booked a fandom convention and were trying to renege on their contract. The benevolent con staff just didn't want us to get kicked out.
We currently have a donation button up on our website, and any little bit that helps. $10, $1, anything helps for us to stay here until the rest of the weekend. Unfortunately, this is something that has been completely out of our control. This is not something that we foresaw, and this is not something that we expected by any sort of means.
Beyond that, there is a post on our blog that went out about it. People are assuming that it was 4chan because we were a target of them.
Oh, yeah.
Not 4chan. This would be the best hack ever to get us up here right now. To get you all in this room. Not 4chan. We're trying to handle it with as much grace as possible, but we do not want to let the system beat us at this point.
I was sobbing at this point. Makeup not running because I had sealed with that Bin Nice setting spray. I think it was Meg or Kane. They were like, you hold the bag. You know, you're crying the most. You seem to be the most sympathetic. So I held a paper bag, Bonnie and Clyde style. I was like, I have a bag. Put the money in it.
This cash was separate?
Yes, we have a donation bag.
Welcome back to donation back up here.
DashCon's original post, which the hotel asked them to take down overnight, stated that the hotel didn't like the con attendees, and that's why they were extorting the extra money. Obviously, a bunch of people were calling bullshit on that. They had a contract, after all. The simplest explanation was that they hadn't paid what they owed, right? I won't say I never looked at the contract. Jesus Christ. However, I only looked it over at signing well over a year previously and wasn't in charge of handling it from there on out. What the hotel was demanding was, as we've come to learn, well within their contractual rights. There was a number of oral changes made, and I deeply regret the lack of documentation there. I stayed outside the room with my friend, standing there in our formal dresses because there was supposed to be a formal dance, wondering what we should do. People were getting locked out of their hotel rooms left and right, guests, speakers, vendors, and yes, admins. I saw a number of the staff in tears because of the stress this was generating. I'm 16, and in my mind, I've saved up, planned cosplays, and drove 2 days to come to this convention. I can't have them shut this down. I remember sitting with a small group during the first emergency meeting and someone calling our little group a Homestuck prayer circle. After the initial panic, it was mostly just hanging out and waiting, and the one strong memory I have of that was someone with a microphone saying, I came out here to have a good time, and everyone else going, and I'm feeling so attacked right now, and laughing about it. They passed around a literal hat to put cash in. They asked us to post on Tumblr and tag John Green and pizza, and we did. People started donating, others begging people online to donate, people sang fandom songs. I even donated like $2 despite my own situation being so bad, because it was such an incredibly uplifting thing to see everyone coming together for this convention they cared about so much, and I wanted to be part of it even if I couldn't afford much.
Also, I felt a very big sense of pride in the Tumblr community. I felt very like, oh my God, these people, they're banding together. Oh my God, do you hear the people singing the song of Angry Men? You know, I'm a musical theater girly. I work in theater. I also research raccoons, but I do so much. I'm so busy. So I was like, yes, Broadway, yes, money, yes, my friends are all here, and I'm so sad, but they're here for me, my people. Now I'm like, whoa.
My impression of the organizers was completely uncritical. I admit I was very gullible and completely swayed by them. This was the era where cynicism wasn't cool yet, and people genuinely believed that if we all pooled our money, we could buy an island to live on. Of course, if we all went to a convention, we'd have a great time. I had zero concept of what the red flags would even look like through most of the event. I remember them passing around collection plates. I think I put in a $20 because I got caught up in the drama and I was still a dumb kid. I did donate money during the rally, something like $100 of my dad's money. I thought it was kind of cute, like, haha, new con runners having a struggle, but my roommate was not impressed. I think as a tabler, I did want to keep my hopes up that the con was going all right. I think my friend and I both dropped $5 in the basket they sent around. It was very confusing. No one knew if it was a scam or if we legitimately might get kicked out of the event space. My friend Des was only 16. I was completely terrified that we were going to be stranded in the middle of suburban Illinois, and I felt like I had put them in a potentially unsafe situation by inviting them along. The room was packed full of teens in various levels of distress. Some people were crying while others were trying to do what they could to keep the mood up. I have an anxiety disorder, and I don't do well in crowded areas. I just remember feeling like I needed to put on a brave face for Des's sake, and tried to joke around to ease the stress, but I was very, very anxious. A lot of attendees were hearing that this was happening, to con staff and assumed that they were going to get locked out of the rooms, even though they had paid for their rooms independently. That wasn't going to happen to them. But a lot of these kids thought that they were going to get kicked out of the hotel and have to sleep on the streets in their cosplay, which is like, it wasn't going to happen to them, but it's still like, it's horrible. I definitely didn't cry and run to the hotel pool to tell my mom. She, however, immediately went, "They're scammers, and we paid for our hotel room, so whatever." I am and was easily panicked, and probably would have given the money, but at this point my brother took us into the hallway. In that hallway, it was almost solely us and some panicked organizers, and a hotel employee or two. I will not be repeating any specific things I overheard just then, but I do want to say, in the years since, many people have referred to DashCon as a scam. It was not. It was people getting in over their heads with organizing an event too large for their experience/knowledge level. The hotel was genuinely going to kick them out. They were genuinely freaking out and trying to come up with cash. Putting people in an unexpected, emotional/high pressure/time limited situation where a bad thing is going to happen unless they get money from you is how many scams work. But the bad thing in this case was a real consequence that was going to happen. I'm embarrassed to say I went to the ATM in the hotel, withdrew $100, and handed it to someone, which was immediately lost to me forever. Other people were also going to the ATM. Some people were asking the hotel staff what was going on and why we were getting kicked out, but the hotel staff had no fucking clue what was happening either. I did absolutely get swept up in the chaos on Friday night, but my anxiety immediately went to catastrophe, and that I was either going to be kicked out of the hotel, even though we'd already paid for our room, and/or I was going to be stranded in Schaumburg until Sunday, or worse. I even got into an argument with a Facebook friend at the time. I don't know, it was kind of ridiculous, and I wish I'd been more objective in the moment. At 18, I thought I was smart enough to read the situation clearly and believe the right people. But at 28, I know I just fell for all the factors that lead to a mob. Pressure, uncertainty, a very loud leader who points to a solution. I feel like in all the reminiscing I've seen about DashCon, nothing has really captured how scary it was to be in that ballroom.
Working so hard and you guys have been so great. Thank you so much.
Lachlan told me that the guy speaking in these videos, also the guy falsely claiming that the Friday night fundraiser was a riot in the Internet Historian video, this guy...
9,500? It's over 9,000!
This guy was apparently the Dash Prom DJ. That's the only reason why he was on stage. He isn't one of the organizers. Nobody really knows what his deal is or why he took charge so much that night, other than that the actual organizers were, like, really busy having breakdowns and not exactly in the place for public speaking. He was a young person with power issues, as Van might say. TLDR, unclear what this guy's deal is. He's not one of the organizers.
Now I know that we are all very passionate about this. This is our place. This is us. We can do this and we're so close. Kane was in tears because of you, because of how perfect and beautiful and generous you all are.
They did a really good job exploiting the fact that most of the people there had been bullied at some time or another. I don't remember any direct quotes, but the rhetoric was a lot of, "We're the underdogs and we're being pushed around, help save the con." Most of what I remember from that gathering was people singing. At one point, a bunch of people did the Hunger Games salute. That was not actually a Hunger Games reference. At the time of DashCon, the person who was department head of the incident response team for Anime Central had trained the con attendees over the years that the Scout salute, the three-finger gesture that later became the Hunger Games salute, was an indication to be quiet and listen to staff. We still use it at Anime Central. The room started singing "Carry On My Wayward Son," which, even at the time, was really embarrassing. I left around that time and I wasn't going to donate any more than the cost of my ticket and hotel room. a lot of people were live vlogging the event, and Tumblr was eating it up. Like I said, the community vibes used to be really strong, so even though attendance was slim, there was tons of people tuned into what was going on. The night of the $17,000 fundraiser, we were all in our hotel watching shit go crazy on Tumblr, just like everyone who wasn't at DashCon. That was pretty surreal. Previously, the DashCon tag was being used by attendees, and it was now a lot of posts about how, of course, the Tumblr convention had failed. I remember seeing it in the tags on Tumblr, and we went down to the event part of the hotel around 11 at night, if I recall correctly, to see what was happening. There was a massive crowd in one of the larger rooms where people were trying to scrounge up money. Everyone was very confused about what was going on, and it was loud. I want to give a shout out to my mom, who was with us through the fiasco. She was, to my point of view, being stubborn and contrarian. She had a bit of a history of being a Karen, and I thought she was being unreasonable. But in that moment, she was seeing straight through the scams and was desperately trying to convince us not to fall for it. We talked about it a few years later. She said in that moment, we were so far in that she worried that if she pushed too hard, she could lose us entirely. Quite a few people I've spoken to seem to think that the admins, or I guess like Meg and Kane specifically, were like really skilled manipulators in that situation, that they knew how to kind of like really play up the emotions and really play up the drama to kind of get people to this place. Would you say that they were master manipulators in that moment, or what?
No, I think they were so scared themselves. Kane and Meg were like genuinely quaking in their boots. They were not smart enough to be master manipulators. The fact that it was so genuine was what made everything, like everybody willing to pitch in. There's this theory that they set out to scam people. They set out to, take people's money and to run away and get rich. The truth is, Meg just wanted, I think, attention, and Kane just wanted like a new life for himself and a new community. And which is why the whole British accent thing came into play. I mean, and I wanted friends. I also wanted like attention in the form of like, people being around me. It came down to it, right? They didn't have any kind of real experience. Yes, Meg is loud and seems to take charge, but when it comes down to it, she was genuinely afraid.
Yeah.
And she genuinely, in that moment, kind of knew that she didn't know what she was doing and she was panicking.
After not getting to see the shit we came for and getting jostled around in the crowd and hassled to donate while sweaty wads of cash got thrown into bags, my roomie and I thought of something hilarious to stir a little shit and make things a bit cringier than they already were. Des is convinced that one of the two of us came up with the idea to get everyone to sing We Are the Champions, but if that's true, I've completely blocked out the memory. We wanted to tell everyone to sing We Are the Champions if they raised enough money, so I recall passing it along to everyone near me and then passing it along further, and oh my fucking god, they really fucking did it. This sounds like a Tumblr fake story, to be honest. My 3 weed-smoking girlfriends will never believe me. I really don't know if this is me implanting a false memory in my mind. Maybe somebody else thought of it first and I spread it from them, as I definitely remember the OMG we should do this being yelled at each other a bunch.
Do you know who we are? We are the champions.
I'm not good.
I had bothered everyone to go to Steak and Shake on Friday, and when we came back, it was dead empty, and we thought they closed for the day or something, until we got past a spot with some hotel security and could distantly hear a crowd singing We Are the Champions, and then the door of that room opened and people started flooding out, and we asked some people what was going on, and no one had the same story. Watching people on Tumblr who weren't there live blog it was weird, and a lot of their opinions were, in my humble opinion, very overly harsh towards the attendees. And sure, we knew we were probably being fleeced a bit, but there was such a lovely vibe of camaraderie and community in that room, especially once the organizers counted the money and said we'd hit the goal. There was singing and dancing and a lot of happy people.
We made it, guys.
video came out of the con attendees singing and chanting in the room, and people who weren't there mocked us so hard for daring to make our own fun in a tense situation. The vibe in the room was not, woo, we love being asked for money, let's party, like a lot of outsiders seemed to think. Most of the people there, myself included, were pulled out of panels we were enjoying, and it sucked, and we were making the best of a situation. Honestly, the DashCon attendee crowd was great at making the best of a con that went from mediocre to disastrous. Everyone knew a lot of what was going on was bullshit, but there was an air of determination to enjoy a weekend with our new internet friends despite what was happening. So yes, we sang our corny fandom songs to keep ourselves sane. After they opened the ballroom doors again and most people left, Dash Prom somehow still happened, and I stayed for most of it. I remember having a manic burst of energy after all of that chaos, and I just needed to dance the stress away.
So I was like wandering the hotel, like the hallways, dressed up as Vriska, still gray. And finally, one of the vendors, Damien, and they found me and they like pulled me into their hotel room and they were like, okay, let's get you some chicken tenders. Let's get you I had to go to the bathroom really badly. I still hadn't eaten. And then Rox did like come and find me and got me back in my room.
Most of the attendees went back to dancing and enjoying themselves, so we headed to the bar to stew over it all. We were joined by some other folks, and eventually Liz and Lindsay of the Baker Street Babes, who told us about the no-frills red-eye flights the con had purchased to fly them out. At that point, their parts of the con were done, and they said they were probably just going to spend the next day in Chicago. I'm disabled, so I had to be in bed by 9 every night, and somehow missed all of the crazy shit that went down. Never caught a lick of anything being off. Day 2 was weird. Everyone who was in the ballroom was very wary of how the con would proceed. People who weren't there were being filled in and warned. I remember spending a lot of that day explaining what happened to strangers. It was all people wanted to talk about. The next morning at 10 a.m. there was a panel in which the con-com was going to explain what went wrong. There were 2 people on this panel and about 20 people in the audience, so clearly the vast majority of con attendees weren't concerned about finding out what the real story was. They were hanging around the hotel in cosplay, going to panels. I attended the con staff's feedback panel, and there was definitely some angry people there.
I remember a lot of that panel was angry parents wanting refunds for the money that their kids donated to the con the night before.
When I talked to the other moms the next day, they were just bewildered, and they were very interested that I had overheard the con organizers. But we were all like, what are we gonna do? We've already got the hotel rooms for the next few days, plus there was still Night Vale later. The vibes after everything broke down, but it was established that the hotel wasn't kicking the event out. We're already here, might as well enjoy the rest of the weekend. So, after all the night's confusion and misinformation, we want to give everyone the full explanation of the events surrounding July 11th, 2014. First, we did owe the hotel money, and that's nothing I can get around. It's extremely common to owe a hotel money for an event at the door, and we made our prepayments beforehand. We have an extremely good track record when it comes to making the appropriate payments for the appropriate things and doing so in a timely fashion. We worked out a plan with the hotel to give them money slowly for the entire course of the weekend, which was more than 100% feasible for us. However, 12 hours later, one of our admins was unexpectedly pulled into a meeting with higher-level hotel staff, at which point they were informed that the convention management had to procure $20,000 by the end of the night. It was an extremely sudden change, especially since we had sent them a number of payments before, and a considerable sum the night before. We could not have been reasonably expected to prepare for the plan to change so suddenly. The sudden change put us in a place where we would not be allowed to open on the morning of July 12th unless we had the full amount for them the night of July 11th. Unfortunately, the money we needed to pay that amount would not have been coming until July 12th in the form of walk-in attendees, as is customary for conventions. Saturday is always the biggest day. While the hotel was aware of this, they still required the money to be provided by 10 p.m. CST. I know that many people believe this to be false, but this was largely due to a miscommunication within the hotel staff. The alternative to the route we perused, I think they meant to say pursued? Alternative to the route we pursued, was to allow the convention to be shut down. Below is an official letter from the hotel, proving that the money was indeed owed and that we had no other route to pursue. Okay, yeah, they did say pursue the second time. Okay, it's pursue. Those who donated via PayPal, we will be refunding you guys after the convention as soon as possible, starting with the largest amounts and moving down from there. We can't thank you enough for the quick response, and we really would have been closed down without the drastic measures which were taken. The hotel itself was great, and they worked with us extremely well, and they are looking forward to having everyone here this weekend. Please, please, please do not give the hotel staff any crap. This change came down from the heavens above. For those panels which were rearranged, they will be rescheduled to the best of our ability and will be happening tomorrow. Looking forward to this weekend. Having planned large events before, let me state that it is fairly standard for large events to pay a deposit with locations before the event and then pay in full after the event. Standard. So before you sped off about how idiotic it was not to pay for the con space in advance, please understand this is standard operating procedure. I cannot say with any authority what caused the change in procedure. It seems likely that the hotel did not fully understand what kind of convention they booked, and when a large group of unconventional teens and young adults showed up, they got nervous and thought the con would not actually pay what was owed. While talking to staff, I was told that the cause of the almost shutdown had been because of a discrepancy between a written contract and an oral agreement, basically saying that the written contract with the hotel was that they would pay for all 3 days on the first day of the convention, but that an oral agreement was made. The hotel agreed to them paying each day as it went, as the convention had daily tickets being sold, and had expected to have the money from those daily ticket sales. Then when the actual convention started, they saw how people were behaving and dressed and things. The written contract was the only part that was honored. There was a rumor going around at the time that someone was holding a wedding at the hotel and complained to the staff because there was cosplayers in the background of their wedding photos. No idea if that actually happened or not, but we had no reason to believe the organizers were lying when they said the hotel staff didn't like the con crowd. I was given misinformation about the reasons the demands were being made, and that misinformation was deeply unsettling. Both Kane and I were led to believe that the hotel had made certain remarks about the type of clientele we brought in, very judgmental things about our attendees, and that was the reason they were trying to quote-unquote force us out. Of course, I've since learned that none of that was true, and I've apologized to the hotel endlessly, both privately and publicly. The rumors started were perpetuated by someone who is no longer with DashCon. The most unfortunate thing here is that these rumors were so easily believable. We wouldn't be the first convention to see its attendees face discrimination. A lot of people at the time were told, oh, it's just because the hotel, thinks the convention is weird, or thinks Tumblr kids are weird, and, we're the underdogs and we just defeat the hotel staff.
Now, as a grown-up, I recently finished getting a tourism and hospitality management degree. I'm going to tell you my thought is that the hotel mistakenly bought into the fact that there were going to be a set number of attendees, that they did indeed make a deal that was like, okay, well, you can pay the $20,000 or whatever at the end of the convention when you have all the money from attendee tickets.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't understand how to project attendees. When we saw reblog this if you're going to DashCon, now I understand how to project attendees, right?
Yeah.
I've went to school at 17. I was like, wow, 20,000 people reblogged this? There must be 20,000 people who are going to come. And we all genuinely believed that this was going to be the largest first-year convention ever. So I don't know if that gives you kind of any insight to where we were mentally.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And now I'm like, okay, think about all the kids who are reblogging that, right? Kids, they rely on their parents. You can't trust 20,000 notes if most of them are from minors. So I think that the convention saw that there were a significantly less amount of people who were attending than we projected. And they were like, oh my God, there is no way in hell that they are going to be able to make up that $20,000 by the end of the weekend. If we want to ensure that we get their money, we need to ask for the money now and say, well, you cannot use the rest of our facilities for the rest of the weekend if we do not get paid now, which personally I think was a smart business decision.
As events started to leak out to the wider internet and people were realizing that the organization was a shit show, it became this sort of wave of fighting misinformation as it came up. For example, there was an After Dark BDSM educational panel. Rumors started spreading online that minors had been in attendance. I had befriended one of the people who ran that panel, and she was adamant that everyone had to either have an 18+ wristband or show valid ID with their age to enter. Pretty standard con procedure for adult panels. And that rumors like that could cost her job. There are ridiculous rumors flying around about things that people think went on. Like there was an underage orgy at the BDSM panel. One of them swore he heard that the BDSM panel had live demonstrations and that they passed around a dildo for us to share. I was being asked with full confidence about absolutely wild things. My ID was checked at the door, so if minors were present, they either snuck in after doors closed or were able to fake an ID. The panel was really tame anyway. They discussed a lot of stigma and literature related to BDSM. I never received an 18+ bracelet. I look young, but not under 18. Still, I can see how a casual observer might have raised some eyebrows about my presence in 18+ panels without that orange bracelet on my wrist. That being said, the staff did request to see picture ID with my birth date on it for every 18+ panel I attended. We actually sent a young-looking member of security around to some of the 18-plus panels to see if he could get in without his card. He was turned away every time. But the panel itself was a very basic 101 sort of panel. The presenters seemed very focused on making sure people didn't get themselves into abusive dynamics because they wanted a BDSM relationship. There was no demonstrations of any kind. The rumor that minors were allowed into the BDSM panel started circulating at least 6 hours before the panel. Numbers according to the admins of the con and the mod of the panel, but I saw the rumor on my dash before the panel started too.
I think Roxanne even printed out the post with a timestamp saying this post was made 2 hours before the panel even started. And that's when I kind of realized that people were just going to lie on the internet about DashCon no matter what. It really discouraged me. It's like knowing the truth, but no one's going to believe you because they would rather believe a random post on Tumblr from someone who wasn't there. I lost a friend over DashCon. I'm not going to lie.
How did that happen?
Someone who wasn't at the convention was just listening to Tumblr. And I'm telling them, look, that's not, and they're like, no, man, you're just part of the scam. I'm like, and it was just very frustrating.
I'm going to be so real with you. I absolutely have snuck into 18 plus panels, not at DashCon, but like at small local anime cons.
Of all the people I've spoken to, there's a lot of people who are very passionate about debunking, specifically the minors in the BDSM panel rumor. Like, people are heated about that. They want you to know 100%. Like, security team who was in front of that door, the panelists, the people who are in there, like, they're all like, absolutely not. No minors in the BDSM panel. I had one person tell me that they snuck into the Deadpool panel underage, but that's it.
Whoa.
Yeah, and if anything, that's like, I understand why there might be less security at the Deadpool panel. Like, BDSM, you're like, okay, no children allowed in here. But with Deadpool, I understand why maybe someone was able to sneak in. It's not quite as big of a deal.
You know what? If you can sneak into a Deadpool panel, I feel like that's what Deadpool would have wanted.
We were chilling outside one of the conference rooms, waiting for a panel probably. Someone excitedly ran up to me and asked me if I had been arrested the night before. I told them no. Obviously, but they were so sure it was me because I was like the only one who looked like the person who was arrested. Later, again, I saw a post that was theorizing about me being arrested because of how I was being escorted out, leaving, by a cop, my dad, in the We Are the Champions video, and that it was because I had a weapon, the prop rifle I carried around. I quickly shot a message to the main person theorizing about this and nipped the whole conspiracy in the bud. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I didn't. We would hear things from other attendees passing by, bits and pieces at a time. They didn't pay the guests, minors were sneaking into 18+ panels, nobody was checking wristbands, every tidbit was gained in snippets of conversations, and rumors started spreading about things that later turned out to not be true at all. Someone did piss in one of the potted plants on Friday night, though. I could smell it. We were being actively attacked online during the event. People that were not there were lying and giving live rundowns of panels they were not at, saying all sorts of things and putting absolute nonsense words into the mouths of panelists. I remember someone posting an account of the LGBTQA panel right after it happened, but this person was posting it from across the country, and none of the things they said actually happened or were said. We started using the tag Train Enthusiast Convention instead of DashCon as a way to differentiate between who was actually at the con and who was pretending to be at the con for internet clout and mayhem. Online, I saw mostly people angry about the scams, and even received some hate anons telling me I was a bad person for enjoying myself during the convention while other people were struggling, like not having a room and having to couch surf. I remember specifically crying while my family were at Cheesecake Factory and I was alone, scrolling through my inbox reading hate mail. I feel like the online response to it was pretty justified. It was terribly run, underwhelming, and pretty expensive for how small it was. The artist alley was alright, but aside from that, it was mostly just an empty convention center with a few weird things like the ball pit. Those of us in the artist alley were starting to freak out about not being able to make back what we put into going to this con. This is a risk at every convention, but DashCon exploded so fantastically around us that the majority of the artists there did not break even. I was one of the lucky few that was able to pay for my hotel and table, but taking in the time I took off work to be there, it was by a slim margin. The vibe in the artist alley had changed. On Friday, the vibe had been, this is kind of a hot mess, but we can still make the best of this. Walking in on Saturday, the vibe was grim as hell. Everyone had this kind of oh fuck look in their eyes. A couple of artists hadn't even returned and their stuff was gone, and one person was in the process of knocking down. That is a bad sign on Saturday morning in an artist alley, since Saturday is normally the big payload. I'm pretty sure I sold one print, if that, Most kids who came by had no money to spend, and as I read online about the events of Friday night, I realized why. They'd all been scammed out of it. Andy Stevenson was gone from his booth on the second day. I had talked to him the day before, and he was planning to be there the whole weekend, so I was surprised. Later, I dug through Twitter and learned that the con hadn't covered his room, or hadn't set up rooms at all, or something like that. Welcome to Night Vale and Stevenson were retweeting each other a lot during and after the con. I believe he ended up bunking with them. Another guest that DashCon is known to have wronged, I guess, was Andy Stevenson. Like, I'm not entirely sure what happened with Andy Stevenson. Like, people say he had to leave and ended up, like, staying with Welcome to Night Vale in a different hotel or something like that. Do you know anything about that?
He got locked out of his hotel room like I did. I don't know if his room ever did get unlocked. If it didn't, that's, like, really shitty. And I'm sorry.
As our official obligations had concluded, we decided to withdraw from having a table or having anything to do with the convention. Liz changed her flight to leave earlier. When Liz and Lindsay checked in, their rooms, as promised, were on the DashCon account. When Liz checked out this morning, she found that card had been removed and that she was left to foot the bill. She called 3 of the con directors, Roxanne, Meg, and Kane, informed them of the situation, saying that if they did not resolve it, she would be calling her lawyer. She waited until she had to leave for the airport. None returned her call or came to the lobby. DashCon is picking and choosing who they want to pay. They're going against their agreements. They're doing nothing but lying and being incredibly deceitful. We are not going to be scammed out of money. Not only is it money we do not have, but it's money that we are not supposed to pay. We are not letting DashCon get away with this. We will be taking the appropriate legal action if they fail to pay. And we highly encourage anyone else in the same boat and with the means to do so, to do the same. The hotel manager and staff have been nothing but gracious in attempting to help us. They've been following the entire debacle on Twitter and Tumblr. They know what's going on. We would be walking past the ballroom where Welcome to Night Vale was supposed to perform, and the line was insane. There was literally so many people outside. I remember being a little bummed that I hadn't gotten tickets, which was obviously a short-lived regret. The Night Vale line was insane. It was well organized and everything. It's just you could 100% tell that this is what 80% of the con was here for. I was far back enough in the line that I worried I wouldn't make it inside before they announced the room was at capacity. People were lined up for Night Vale and we cheered as the cast walked by to go set up. Only something wasn't quite right. We could see Night Vale talking to the organizers, clearly waiting until something was resolved before loading in. Then, much to everyone's confusion, Night Vale starts to grab their gear and leave.
I had Joseph Fink look me in the eye and say, "No, we're leaving."
So you were kind of like behind the scenes when they left? Can you tell me about that?
Oh yeah, they showed up 45 minutes late Saturday morning, and it's just Joseph, and he wants to be paid up front before the show starts. Roxanne tells him that wasn't in your contract. We'll pay you after the show's done. I didn't hear the whole conversation. I stepped away for like a few minutes to answer like a radio call or something, but I came back to him leaving.
My brother and I had paid an extra $60 to come see Welcome to Night Vale. It was why we were there. The room was lovely and spacious with a number of seats. Kids were milling around, chatting, checking out each other's costumes, and occasionally taking photos. It was a typical convention scene.
Hey, this is Lynette from the Geeky Area, and we're here for the live reading of Welcome to the Night Vale. Hope you enjoy. It's 12:50. It is 12:50 right now, and they're still not here, so...
No, I think that's Jack.
We don't know what to do. Nothing much is going on. A lot of people have relaxed already, so... The wait must go on.
My ex cosplayed Cecil and I cosplayed Kevin, characters from the podcast. We ended up grouping with some of our online friends. Many were also in Welcome to Night Vale cosplay, and all of them were getting to meet IRL for the first time. We sat together on the left side of the room, nearish the front, after waiting a long time in line. I remember the starting time coming and going with almost no communication from the organizers. After about 15 minutes, some person took the stage to apologize for the delay, told us the con staff were in contact with Welcome to Night Vale, and made vague noises about the panel starting soon, but failed to give us any real information. Noon came and went, and still there was no one on stage. One of us had a Koshik fursuit, and the room where Welcome to Night Vale failed to happen was like 1 billion degrees, and we were in there for at least 2 hours with no news of whether or not it was going to happen. The DashCon staff I saw looked sort of baffled and huddled to discuss things in hushed voices. Someone in a truly fantastic glow cloud costume got up and did a runway walk down the center aisle, and we all cheered them on. People were polite, eager, they wanted to have a good time. I say this having staffed 3 different conventions on both coasts and paneled at well over half a dozen, and having done so since 2009. The DashCon attendees were some of the best and kindest I have ever seen. I mean, getting a ballroom of nerds to chant all hail the glow cloud at me while I ad-libbed a bit about the baby glow cloud I made was pretty fucking memorable, not to brag. Totally bragging though. I noticed a woman standing at the front of the room. She was shouting, clearly trying to talk to all of us, but of course we couldn't hear her. Eventually, she strode purposely towards the stage. She climbed up the steps and crossed to the microphone with utmost confidence. Finally, I thought we were getting an update. The room quieted a bit. She grasped the mic and, amplified to the entire room, boldly asked us, "Does anyone want to order a pizza?" A cheer rose from the audience for some reason. This woman eventually began to poll us about which establishment we preferred, beginning with Pizza Hut. "We're in Chicago!" yelled a voice from the back of the room, but he was unheeded, as her next suggestion was Domino's. I immediately made for the door. I can only take so much.
Yeah, they're ordering pizza. Oh, come on, we're in Chicago. What are you doing right now?
Waiting.
For how long?
More than an hour.
Someone tried to order pizza during the extremely long wait for Welcome to Night Vale, but it was done in an orderly fashion, and nobody went apeshit when security shut the effort down. With a potential 13 minutes left for the panel, Roxanne came in and made the famous ball pit announcement.
I know you guys have been waiting for an extremely long time, but unfortunately what I have to tell you guys is that basically Night Vale just walked.
What?
Okay, if everyone would like to collectively, groan and sigh together, that's what I've been doing, so we can take a second to do that. So on 3, we're all gonna sigh together, okay? So 1, 2. Give me back my money! Okay, so you guys have been more than extremely patient with us, especially after all of the craziness that happened last night, and I literally can't tell you guys how much that means to us, but what happened today was just a fluke, and basically what happened was they wanted everything up front, and they didn't want to wait until after their panel, we had to go run to a bank, and they refused to wait until after their panel to let us give them the rest. So, I don't really know what to tell you guys about that. Again, I am so sorry. We didn't have a chance to run to the bank beforehand, and we tried to explain the situation, and we were like, we'll have it to you as soon as your panel is over, and they just said no and walked out.
When we were told they were not coming, I was quite forlorn and called my mom to go home. I can't remember verbatim what they were saying, but I remember it was along the lines of, they agreed to be paid after, but now they're demanding the rest up front and aren't giving us enough time to go to the bank, very much pushing the blame for the delays onto the cast of Welcome to Night Vale and not themselves. I believe the majority, if not all of the attendees, felt the same as we did. Because at this point, several panels were being cancelled. I can't even remember the other panels I'd sat in because they were almost all completely empty and the speakers were so unenthusiastic. And the fiasco with the hotel not being paid, it was all just like, come on, LOL. This is obviously the organizers' fault and not the cast of Welcome to Night Vale.
I'm not on the stage with her, but I'm right off stage. That was when the threats started coming in. I remember we were scrolling through her Tumblr and just seeing the amount of anons was, it was sad.
Apologies to fans in Northern Illinois. The organizers of an event we were scheduled to be part of today were unable to pay for our flights, hotel, and performance fee. We tried very hard to make this happen. We took a full break in the middle of our July tour to attend this small fan-based event. We paid for our own hotel and plane fare, and we were very excited to be part of this intimate fan gathering. But after a morning of discussion, organizers were unable to pay for the costs of travel and performing. We are disappointed that things were not worked out in a timely manner and that we could not perform for our fans. We hope to be back in the Chicago area soon. Thank you for understanding. You, as fans, deserve better than this. This left a 2-hour opening in one of the bigger halls. I found the organizer's office and asked if I could have the space. The organizer's office was the coat closet for events where you check your coats for the hotel to hold on to. They said yes to me, so I ran around telling people I had plans for the space and tried to collect as many Welcome to Night Vale fans as I could. I managed to put on a last-minute fan reading of one of the episode scripts, Old Oak Doors Part A, for the first hour, and a character Q&A for the last half, where myself and some cosplayers answered questions in character. At some point, a few of the fans took charge and sat at the table at the front meant for the Welcome to Night Vale cast. My friend and I left around that time. We didn't stay long after that because there wasn't anything else to do. My friend, who was dressed as Cecil, had me go up, I was dressed as Carlos, and join when they asked for a Carlos. We answered questions in character, and I was asked how I got out of the desert, since my My character was trapped there in the show at the time, and I said, "Have you ever heard of a man called the Doctor?" And the audience lost their shit. That was great. Then we decided to do a reading of the episode Old Oak Doors Part A, with us huddling around shared iPhones to read the script. I remember my line, "I'm not a hero, I'm just a scientist," got a big response from the audience. I was super shy at the time, and usually being in front of people scared me, so doing this was a surprise. I've never heard anyone mention the fan panel or reading in anything about DashCon, which is disappointing because I think it sums up how despite the bad management, we had fun, and it was what cons really are about, getting together with other nerds. And then a bunch of Night Vale fans went to Arby's together. I did not attend this, because an Arby's with 100 people in it does not seem like a good time. I did feel bad for the workers, but besides the eccentric outfits, everyone was very chill and friendly. I'm pretty much preaching to the con-going choir here, but Doug Jones is such a sweetheart. I went to his Q&A after getting food on Saturday, and it really did ease the sting of the Night Vale walk-off. He's super sweet and funny, and honestly does give some of the best hugs I've experienced. If you ever go to a con and Doug Jones is there, please take the time to go say hello. Meeting Doug Jones and taking a selfie with him where he hugged my face was the best moment for me. That selfie has literally been my profile picture on Tumblr and Facebook since that day.
Doug Jones came up to Roxanne and I and just actually do you guys need a hug? And you know what? I'm going to tell you this. It was a good hug. Doug Jones, amazing guest, took everything with stride. I think he was the only guest who did not have, a complaint.
I distinctly recall there being a refund policy on the DashCon blog prior to these hiccups that said something along the lines of, refunds will be issued in the event that the panel is cancelled. Turns out, they edited the verbiage of their cancellation policy so that no refunds would be issued. But this is where the infamous, in exchange you'll get an extra hour in the ball pit line came from. Hi DashCon attendees. It's been a crazy weekend this weekend, and we literally cannot apologize enough for all of the crazy things that have happened. With regards to today, and welcome to Night Vale, we don't want to get into it, but we will officially say that we did have the money for Night Vale, and a large majority of it was in cash. The remainder was available via PayPal, but unfortunately PayPal was malfunctioning, and they were unwilling to wait. For those of you who had reserved seats, we are giving you guys an extra hour with the ball pit. This was the only time I heard about the ball pit having a time limit. I don't know what the regular time limit was. I can't imagine anyone wanting to spend an entire hour in that thing. I turned to our group and said, let's get out of here before it gets overrun. Not a big fan of crowds, so I got us to escape early. We followed the map to the room where the ball pit was supposed to be. I remember bumping into a Slender Man cosplayer just outside the room who just stared at us, too in character to warn us about what we were about to walk into. Just standing there, LOL. We walked in, and it was exactly as it looked when I took those photos. Totally empty, nothing but an inflatable bounce castle, and what can only be described as an old kiddie pool with blue tape holding it together, partially filled with balls that looked like they'd been stolen from a Chuck E. Cheese. I asked the group to wait a second so I could take some pictures of what I was seeing because I was so flabbergasted, and it really was just hilarious. I mean, I was pissed, but it was objectively the funniest shit I've ever seen. We took a few more photos playing in it, jumped around in the castle, and a lot of us organized a Welcome to Night Vale cosplay shoot along the wall afterwards. Afterwards, that photo continued to circulate. It was in local newspapers, on web articles, and all over the internet. Close friends always send me memes or merch that include or allude to my photo. I really enjoy it. It makes the whole absurd thing feel worthwhile. So every now and then, I'll pop up to say, hey, that's me, that's my photo. But frankly, I love that it belongs to the internet now.
The ball pit has since been resold, and we found it elsewhere online.
The ball pit is, still out there, is what you're saying. Yeah. Interesting. Yes. It's still in circulation 10 years later, even though it looks like it's falling apart in all of those old photos. I guess, what was the ball pit like in real life? What was the vibe of the ball pit?
It was bad. It was so disappointing.
What had the expectation for the ball pit been?
So I had watched this video on YouTube years before, when I first started DashCon, TumbleCon, and it was strangers sit in a ball pit and meet each other for the first time. So that was what I was thinking. 5 feet by 5 feet at the absolute least, but sturdy, not inflatable. But people, grown-ups, for grown-ups.
Not what looks like a kiddie pool filled with balls.
This is the most disappointing moment of my entire life. I felt my heart sink into my stomach. I felt like I was going to cry, but there were no more tears. So I simply just resigned myself to sitting just limply in the ball pit.
Oh.
And I think I just had some Taco Bell nacho cheese, and I may have dropped a little bit of cheese in the ball pit, but I'm just sitting on the floor, just eating. There's a lot of cheese.
So it was not pee in the ball pit, it was Taco Bell nacho cheese in the ball pit. This is the true DashCon lore.
Have you ever found the post that proved someone peed in the ball pit?
No, I think that's complete fiction.
It is a complete okay. I have never seen the post. I keep hearing about the post. No one's been able to ever show me the ball pit piss pictures.
Yeah, I think it's fully urban legend. It's the most famous DashCon, like there's many DashCon urban legends. The pee in the ball pit is the most famous one, and I don't think there's anything to it.
No, there is not.
I almost am a little bit, like, afraid to release this video and debunk these stories that people love so much about DashCon. Like, I'm gonna do it. It needs to be done. And there's...
Please. Yes, please. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of, like, being the person to be like, no, that didn't happen.
At one point, I went to a Rooster Teeth fan meetup in the cafeteria, and we stared wistfully at the ball pit, which was full of Homestucks. I dared not try enter. We went to the room with the ball pit and the bouncy castle and just sat in it for a bit with some Homestuck cosplayers. We were having fun and chilling, and then someone had the great idea to have a ball fight. So we were throwing them at each other and having fun with that until someone, I don't know if it was a random killjoy or an organizer, yelled at us to stop. We weren't harming anything, nor was anyone else trying to get their extra hour in the ball pit. But we picked up the balls that had gone wide, and then a few of us moved to the bounce house, where I had a wonderful conversation with a Damara Medigo cosplayer. I can't remember her name, or what we spoke about. She told me her Tumblr handle, and I had intended to write it down, but I never did. Honestly, I've thought about her sort of frequently with a wistful sort of nostalgia. I wish I'd been able to remember her name or Tumblr handle at least so we could reconnect. The ball pit was wild. There was at least a dozen Homestuck cosplayers just hanging out, throwing little plastic balls at one another, laughing and having a good time. I had wandered to where the Homestuck people were hanging out the day prior. It was weirdly quiet. Then I remember, I'm pretty sure it was the real Ray West that had come up to me like, oh my god, you have to come. We're all in the ball pit. And I was, of course, confused until I saw the ball pit. The majority of the photos I have are from ball pit stuck. There was a Homestuck meetup at the ball pit, and a lot of us had found each other already or had been hanging out in little feral packs of Homestucks, so we all meshed super well and basically immediately became besties. We ended up kind of collectively agreeing to post stuff in the ball pit stuck tag, which is hilarious. I actually made fan art at the time. I still follow several of the people I met in the ball pit. We posted some selfies that got reblogged by the main DashCon blog, and from there things spiraled as people went, holy shit, that's the ball pit? Being offered an extra hour in the pit as compensation for the cancelled Night Vale show definitely didn't help. It was cheesy, yes, but there was people jumping and laughing in the bounce house and others hanging out in the ball pit. They were having fun. It was cute. So I snapped a picture with my phone, and then I thought, oh, I know. I'll add a cheesy postcard-like bit of text to this and post it to Tumblr. 10 minutes later, it had 1,000 notes, then 2,000, then 3,000. I remember seeing the person who took the photo walk further away and take the picture. I remember the exact conversation I was having at the time, which was me pointing out how weird it looks that I had the full gray paint on my face, but none on my arms, which is why my sleeves are a bit rolled up in the picture, and everyone in the pit is looking at me. Also notably in that picture, that is indeed Slenderman in the bouncy castle. I'll be honest, the pictures that have gone viral are the only times I even saw the ball pit. It wasn't of interest, so it wasn't important. It was in a largely untouched area of the con, so yeah, it was pitiful, but it's not really the hallmark of what the con was. Someone else had rented out the ballroom on Saturday for their unrelated wedding reception, which is why there weren't any panels there. We were asked to be respectful and not bother them, and as far as I know, people did a pretty good job. That might be why there aren't any photos of it circulating. My little brother was there for a bit in Harry Potter cosplay, and one of the wedding guests complimented his Ron Weasley cosplay, which is why I remember it happened. They were doing their wedding photos in the hotel staircase and around the area, so we kept having random areas blocked off for like 20 minutes to prevent us from ending up in the couple's photos by accident. At the end of the day, though, I did see the bride at the hotel bar talking to people and dancing with someone dressed as the Joker in a wedding dress, and she seemed to be happy. Someone I spoke to had spoken to her, and while it wasn't expected, obviously, she wasn't upset about it. There was an unofficial Attack on Titan meetup. After the planned events of the panel wrapped up, nobody actually wanted to leave. People would leave and return in their PJs with sketchbooks or laptops and write fanfiction or draw fan art or just talk and talk and talk. I got in that room around 7 or 8 p.m. and didn't leave until 2 a.m. As for Time Crash, despite having not watched Doctor Who in about 2 years, I did not feel lost watching a Doctor Who themed band perform. They were high energy all the way, and the lead singer Ronan Cohn has an astounding voice. I ended Saturday with the Time Crash concert where I got to dance with Doug Jones. If nothing else happened that weekend, I would have been perfectly happy with how it all turned out. I was at the illegal Pacific Rim screening. Like, my friend secures movie rights for screenings professionally now, and they think that shit is hilarious. I stayed up all night Saturday night with a group of people who were drinking some gross alcohol out of a steel water bottle and having fun. While we were sitting around hanging out on the last night, Everyone there was actively getting hateful messages and threats into our inboxes because these people were hunting for anyone that mentioned DashCon or was spotted in pictures from DashCon. We were sitting around laughing and chatting, but occasionally had to go hug someone and give them a little pep talk or help formulate a reply when they checked their messages. I checked my Dash and it was just a torrent of ball pit jokes, yelling about panels, misogynistic drivel about how teenage girls always ruin fandom and cons, and nearly every post was insisting that this is the worst convention in the history of the universe. It was jarring. It was incredibly surreal. Honestly, I think I was afraid to get clowned on by posting about DashCon on Tumblr while I was there, so I avoided it. There was a lot of online hate by people not attending who wanted to make fun of everyone who went. By Sunday, the energy was all very, this is a disaster, but at least everyone here is cool. People were swapping URLs, significantly fewer people and very few people were dressed up, morale, low. We were all trying to ignore the fact that DashCon was trending on Tumblr and no one was saying good things about us. It's my firm belief that if everyone who says, LOL, I was there and it was so cringe, had actually been there, the con would have hit its attendance goal. There was a panel just titled Arts and Crafts. There was only one craft offered, which was to make a DashCon memory booklet. I was understandably fed up with the con at this point, and made a point to record all the things that made the convention suck. The whole convention was extremely unprofessional. Admins reacting as if they're being attacked when they're not. Admins walking around wrapped up in a blanket. Honestly, another interesting kind of offhand claim that someone made that I wanted to maybe verify with you. It was one of the artists who was in the artist alley who near the end of the con had a lot of beef with the admins and wanted their money back and whatever. And they were going on this rant about how unprofessional everything was. And they made this offhand comment about admins walking around wrapped up in a blanket, or someone walking around wrapped up in a blanket. Is that a thing? Okay.
Blanket that I brought to DashCon. I would 100%, and I still do this as a grown 26-year-old woman. Same blanket. You can catch me roaming around the resorts near the Guatemalan border like a freaking old Russian lady.
It was suspicious, it was bad, and then it became very scary for me as an international vendor when it was confirmed that DashCon was not actually a registered LLP in Illinois. If I claim the wrong thing on my taxes, I can be audited and face jail time. I'm a teacher. I would lose my ability to teach because I need to have a clean criminal record to teach in Canada. Over a convention, for real? As a company intern for legal documents, I've learned with experience what a company needs to operate in any one state. If you look at DashCon's legal page, you will see that they go by DashCon LLP, Limited Liability Partnership, and originate in Ohio. So I checked it out, and in Ohio, that is a real company. So what's the problem? The convention that they have organized and made money from is being hosted in Illinois. Separate state means separate rules, filings, legal processes, everything. And fun fact, filing in Illinois is super hard because they are rightfully meticulous. So I checked out Illinois and they aren't filed there. Myself and a group of other artists went to speak with the head of the con around 9:30 a.m. We were told that we would have to wait for Roxanne, probably for half an hour. We were there for at least an hour before she showed up and spoke with us for maybe 5 minutes. We weren't getting anywhere in the conversation, so we just asked for our money back and for us to be released from our contract, as we did not want to be associated with DashCon as vendors any longer. She told us she would have to talk about it with her fellow admins and disappeared again. My tablemate and I waited for news. A woman, staff likely, hands me $20 saying, "This is for you." I ask her what it's for. She says she doesn't know, they just told her to give it to me. And I say, "Is this for the tables?" I had 2. And she goes back to ask for more information. She comes back minutes later with $40. So basically, I got $40 back from $300. After one of the Sunday panels, the group inside decided to conga line from that panel to the closing remarks, since it was the last time slot before the end of the con. Being young and dumb and full of energy and surrounded by people in high spirits despite it all was something to remember, even if I have to resist cringing at the memory.
There were a lot of mistakes made on a lot of different people's parts, and we take full responsibility for the parts that were us. We are first timers, but we intend to learn from our mistakes to make 2015 even better. We're not going to let this defeat us. I have seen far too many of you guys having fun to think that this was not worthwhile. For real. You guys have been so kind to us when you really could have not been. And I apologize on behalf of all of us for all the hiccups the roller coaster ride, but like...
Last thing I remember of the con is stumbling out of the panel and stress vomiting up a matcha latte in the hotel bathroom because I thought my girlfriend of 2 days at the time would surely break up with me for telling her to fly across the country for this shit show. It was definitely a formative experience in our relationship, at least. DashCon was mentioned in both of our vows. On the way out on Sunday, I remember finally being able to check Tumblr, and my inbox was full of increasingly worried check-ins from friends. I found it weird that people were asking me if I was okay while I was at the con, as if it had become some sort of riot where I was in danger. By the time we left, I just remember being like, I think we've experienced something very interesting.
I left very early Sunday morning. Truly, I kept getting more death threats, more death threats, more death threats. I'm like, oh my God. The people fucking hate me. And as soon as I landed back in Denver, I was like, haha, fuck you. I'm out. I'm 17. You can't sue me. Literally, as soon as my plane touched down, I left the DashCon blog. Now I regret it because I feel like I could have gotten some really good screenshots. But I was so scared at the time. I wasn't scared when we didn't have money. I was scared when people were threatening my life because everybody knew that I was in the DashCon ball pit. I told you, I came home and my dad had it pulled up. I have a picture of him with it pulled up on the big screen TV. Had it pulled up on the big screen TV. And so he knew. And I kept saying, that's not me. That's not me. That is not me. That's not me. And all of like my friends at the time, like, were like, okay, that's not you. That's not you. And then finally, like a couple weeks later, we're like, but that is you, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's me.
One of the things promised by the con staff early on was free Wi-Fi, which the hotel didn't actually offer. I had very little data, so although I made posts, I didn't spend much time scrolling Tumblr. It wasn't until I got home on Sunday that I realized our experience had become a meme. I defended the organizers and the con at first, but as the years went by and more came out about the mismanagement and how the creators, vendors, talent who showed up were treated, it became clear that it was a train wreck behind the scenes. When I got home and made a post about DashCon clarifying events, I had several people telling me that I was a liar. Like, I was there. There are pictures of my booth. There are pictures of me. There are pictures of people wearing my flower crowns. I can prove I was there. It is really easy to make a target out of a convention that skews young, female, queer, and neurodivergent and say, I'm not being bigoted. These people just deserve to be targeted for being annoying. Any excuse to be a jackass. I don't regret DashCon per se. I got to hang out with friends in a new place and make memories. Isn't that the real goal of traveling? It was kind of a sore spot for a long time, though. I never liked ball pit jokes. I was always made to feel like I had to defend my being there, like being cringe made me a deserving target or something. Someone who complained about the BDSM panel referred to a bunch of hyper-super hulock XD random teenage girls. There was no such people at DashCon, or if they were, they kept their beloved randomness to themselves. While in reality, the hateful non-attendees on the website were participating in one of Tumblr's worst habits, spreading false information without checking their facts. There are plenty of jokes about ooh-woo fragile small bean Tumblrinas being cringe at the event, of course, but I didn't see any of that. Not to say it didn't happen, I have no idea if it did or did not, but the people I was around for the whole weekend were older than most of the attendee demographic, and the majority of us were seasoned artist alley vendors, so we were there to make money and network, not do any ooh-wooing. I honestly had a pretty great time, and I felt like other people were too, but I think my perspective on the overall vibe is limited by the fact that I was 16, didn't plan to attend the Welcome to Night Vale reading, and lived in Chicago. Because I didn't have to pay for a Welcome to Night Vale ticket or for accommodations, I didn't feel very directly affected by the failings, mistakes, whatever you want to call it, from the organizers. I don't think the response online was necessarily incorrect or unwarranted, but I do think there was definitely a lack of nuance in talking about it that was/is pretty typical of Tumblr. I remember having private conversations with friends I made at DashCon where we acknowledged that we had a good time and were glad to meet each other, but we rarely talked about it publicly on our blogs because the response from non-attendees was pretty much always negative. Personally, a big thing for me is that I had just started experimenting with gender, and that hotel room was the first time I ever wore a skirt around anyone other than my wife. Good memories there. People seem to think it was a total disaster and that no one had fun and that Tumblr kids got what they deserved. I think that's a mean way to look at it. It was basically just a fan convention, and I know a lot of attendees did have fun meeting friends and sharing interests. There was more than the ball pit, and people who've only seen that picture don't realize there was actually fun to be had despite it being run poorly. When I tell people that DashCon was fun, they give me weird looks. It came up in my D&D group this weekend, and when I said I'd been there, the rogue said he'd never met anyone who'd been quote-unquote on the front lines before. That's how I read the popular perception of DashCon. It was a complete disaster and that I should have been traumatized by the experience. From the perspective of a young teen who was definitely seen as the weird kid in school, before being into anime or superheroes was just a thing everyone did, it was actually a really good experience, even if it was a bit of a mess organizationally. It was great to meet people who shared my interests and welcomed me despite me being a lot lot younger than most of the people there. Now I get to feel like the elder at the post-apocalyptic campfire who's the only one that recalls the before times. Mostly, I'm still just annoyed that those idiots handled things the way they did. They took everyone's money and ran in my book, including mine. I've worked at/staffed cons and festivals before and after this, including one in which another attendee's campfire spontaneously combusted, and another in which my tent flooded and I had to sleep on my suitcase to stay dry. And none have ever pissed me off or left me feeling scammed like this one. My experience for first-year conventions is usually a small artist alley, some programming, a few performances, a couple of guests, held in a community center. I think they decided to go big or go home, and it's like, no, start small, work upwards. Not paying your talent is absolutely heinous. This is why contracts exist. Apparently, they were hoping to make careers out of planning this and future cons. But this was advertised as a fan-run con, and fan-run cons are not supposed to be events that make money for the organizers. After I got home from the con and could decompress, DashCon memes were very cathartic. I was upset for a bit that I had spent all my money on such a shit show, but it was impossible not to laugh about how ridiculous it was. There are definitely some claims that have circulated over the years that I believe to be fully untrue, or shitposts taken out of context and got mythologized over time. Our Megamind meetups were honestly almost DashCon reunions. 90% of the people who show up to them were at DashCon. Lifelong friends for sure. I got engaged at DashCon in 2014. Absolutely no regrets. I met my husband in high school, we dated long distance through college, we knew we'd be getting engaged, we had the rings, and at some point he was like, what if we got engaged while cosplaying at this event? And I was like, sounds amazing, let's do it. So we determined that it would be happening, and it was only a question of when. I beat him to it, sang the song from the second or third How to Train Your Dragon film on one knee, because why not? Might as well, right? Anyway, I like to joke that cringe culture is dead, because I looked it in the eye and shot it at point blank range at DashCon. Life's too short to worry about that crap. Zero regrets at all, we've been together 17 years total now. Bring Convenient on Tumblr said something I kind of want to highlight. Friend, I would have hated to be at the con that is being described at DashCon, so it's a good thing that that DashCon doesn't exist, and that I got to go to the real DashCon instead. It was an incredibly chill, fun, and safe con to be at. It is, to this day, one of my favorite conventions to have attended, and it bore so little resemblance to the fanfiction version of it that became internet gospel, during and in the immediate aftermath, that I get worked up and will drop a rant in a heartbeat to this day. While its larger problems are disappointing, DashCon's grassroots project should be appreciated for what it did accomplish. Speaking as a trans woman, we don't get a lot of places to feel secure and actually free to focus on our interests and fandom without our transness also being part of the context. DashCon was one of those few places. I'm genuinely sad that the reputation of DashCon, compounded with its planning failures, meant that there never got to be a second, better, more experienced DashCon. Why doesn't Tumblr just come out and say that they want a chance to rip on teenage girls? Why not just make that up front? The vast majority of attendees were first-timers and were teenage or early 20s women. The fact that Tumblr has decided that out of every demographic in the world, girls at this con are the worst is just straight up misogyny to me. I don't care that you find fandoms annoying. I'm going to be protective as fuck towards most of the people who came to DashCon looking to have a good time. They are not remotely responsible for the problems it had. I still want to emphasize that the people and artists I met at this con, and the volunteers were absolutely amazing, just very smart and kind. I'm always happy to see Mark Oshiro as a published author now, that Sage Coffee, one of the artists I met, who was actually my seatmate back to Atlanta, recently got their comic Wine Ghost Goes to Hell published and actually worked on the video game Bugsnax. The long and short of it is that I had a great time overall, and I made friends who I still keep in loose contact with to this day, and that the jokes outweigh the hate to such a degree that I forgot the hate even existed. A lot of stuff is like that 10 years down the line. I actually still have my press badge. I hid it away in a bag for years, not wanting to look at it. But last year I finally decided to hang it on my living room wall.
In the beginning, all I wanted to do was bring joy to people and help people like connect with others. I did.
Yeah, you did. You definitely did. Like, a lot of people, thought it was like kind of shitty, whatever. But a lot of people said that it was such a standout to them because the community was so kind and so respectful, and because they could kind of finally find their weird queer and neurodivergent crowd, and like that it was extremely worth doing, and that they made lifelong friends, or that they made such important memories. Like, DashCon is a positive memory to so many people out there, and that's something that I didn't, I guess, prepare to encounter when I started researching this. The perception of DashCon that is out there is like has been so constructed after the fact by people who were like live blogging it and like following it online rather than people who were actually there. Like, the perspective of the people who were actually there has pretty much never been heard, which is so weird.
It is weird. I think a very large portion of Tumblr is neurodivergent, is queer, is used to being othered, to being, in school and being the person who's sitting in the English teacher's room during lunch, to not really having a real friend group, who is for the first time getting online and feeling like they have real friends, because they do have real friends. And they're realizing that friendship isn't a in-person thing. You can be talking to somebody online and never even, make eye contact with them over a video. You can only communicate through reblogs and asks and whatever, and you're still real friends, and those friendships are real, and they matter to you, and you care about them, and you care about their fan fictions, and you care about their reblogs, and you care about their ships, even if you're not in their fandom. And so to have that kind of connection with somebody for the first time in your life is life-changing. And when you experience that for yourself, you want other people to be able to experience that too. At least in my case, was that if I can find friendship, if I can find a sense of community, I want other people to be able to do the same that they can, because I don't think that I'm special. I don't think that my case is unique. And as you said, you've spoken to other people and they've felt that sense of community too, that it's not unique. And so when you have all of these different people who are so used to being alone, feeling, I sound like a My Little Pony character, but feeling the power of friendship for the first time, I think that's life-changing. And it makes you want to do big things that might seem impossible. It might make you want to get an island with a bunch of Tumblr people. It might make you want to start a university and think that you can do it because you are so overwhelmed with excitement for your friends and your community that you instead start a Tumblr convention, and there's going to be a ball pit, and then the ball pit is a little deflated kiddie pool. But they're there. The people are there.
The friends were there. The real DashCon ball pit is the friends we made along the way.
Real DashCon ball pit is in our hearts, because the whole thing that started the DashCon ball pit idea was strangers making friends with each other in a ball pit for the first time. And do you want to know what happened at DashCon? Strangers met each other for the first time in a ball pit and made friends. So
there was a little more gray paint involved than you would expect, but
no pee.
Like I said, I did not attend DashCon, but I feel like I was the target audience for DashCon at the time. And there are photos from DashCon that absolutely gut stab me with nostalgia, because even though they're not photos of my friends and I from the time, we looked exactly like those kids. The people in those photos are I feel like I can reach through the screen, and that is my childhood too. I think that's the reason why I'm so fixated on DashCon and why I've interviewed over 50 people who were there. Thank you for creating DashCon, I guess. Thank you. There's a group of people who are apparently trying to have a DashCon tribute, DashCon 2 situation in my city next year.
So what is that DashCon 2 called? Because I'm really curious. I would love to. Toronto is the raccoon diabetes capital of the world.
It's what now?
Toronto is the raccoon diabetes capital of the world.
Okay.
I want to come up there and look at your fat raccoon.
You anytime.
And go to DashCon 2, and then also just take some notes on your diabetic raccoons.
Perfect. That's right, that's the twist ending to this video. We are doing DashCon 2. Lachlan and I have both since spoken to the organizers, and they're cool and they have realistic goals. I will be there. If nothing else, I will be there. DashCon 2 is going to be me, dressed as Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway in the ball pit, somewhere in Toronto. But I do of course have hope that it's going to be way bigger and cooler than just that. I can't say a lot because many things are yet to be confirmed, but make sure you go follow them for more details in the coming months. Thank you so much for watching this video, my friends, and I will see you at DashCon next year.